This is not the last episode of Some of the Insight for 2024, because if you watched past episodes, you will know that Monty said we will do episodes during the off season for reals, though. Not even just like, yeah, well, definitely loads of historical, nothing for real. We're actually doing for real this time. Not least because, as you will find in this episode, since we're going to talk about the outcome of Worlds, obviously there are actually potential historic implications on people's, maybe some of the off season content. Maybe we'll do a greatest lineup thing. Maybe we'll do an update to the greatest players ever. There's all sorts of pieces of content we can do. And also, here's what's funny, Monty. I actually know, hello to all the lunatic T1 stands who only started watching in like 2019. And in your bio on Twitter, it even says like 19 years old. And they're like, do the math. It's impossible. You would have been you'd have been like, Mummy, I don't want to eat these dinosaur chicken nuggets. Oh, Faker's just done. Faker, the moves. Like, you couldn't even have been. There's no way you went back, and you definitely didn't watch it at the time. But okay, we get it. You've really attached yourself to it now, and now your whole identity is being a T1 fan. Here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is T1 won. You got what you think you dream of. You got Faker's 5th title. By the way, he even beat Chovy in the night. All those LPL glazers were proven wrong. We know nothing about League of Legends, and this was always going to happen. But here's the bad news for you. I'm actually going to really enjoy this episode, because you know what's going to tilt the fuck out of you? I made this point the whole time. I actually love that Faker, bro. That Faker from Game 4, Game 5 is great. The guy who was the GOAT. That's the shit I want to see every World. It's like, by the way, I've got some takes I'm going to do now. I've got a hot take point made coming up with some of these. Bro, I'll go one further than even the stands. I actually think the Game 5 moment of Faker, here's the key thing, Monty. You have to put this phrase in context, because unlike, other great moments in history, you can just watch them, you can just see them. You have to know the context to the Game 5 ones. But in context, Monty, I actually think that might be the greatest moment in the history of esports.
Wow.
Faker's way he came in Game 5 against like the new school GOATs, and like he had to actually roll back bro, it's 11 years after he won the first Worlds. Like, no one's ever done anything like this in esports. It's actually mental. Like, it doesn't mean he was the best player in the world. Obviously, like, you could joke his Keria was probably even better in the tournament. But in that Game 5, if you had to pick moments in history and like context, that was actually some like John Wick, Neo from the Matrix shit, man, where he just flew in and just saved the day. It's insane, wasn't it? If you think about it, to win his 5th title, it's pretty crazy.
And here's the thing, T1 fans. When we talk about T1, you can if they were just the greatest the whole time, then this win is just expected, right? But
and
if
this show would be very different. Spoiler: we'd be called the T1 Glazers, because if they played like this all the time, we'd be fucking loving them, mate. This is what I'd love to watch. The point is, they wouldn't play like this, were they?
But here's the thing. T1 wasn't this good the whole time. And I think BLG played a pretty respectable playoffs overall. It wasn't that BLG made a ton of mistakes. It was that it truly was such an insane T1 performance, and particularly Faker performance. And guess what? Because we've been saying teams like BLG and Gen G are good. Now we can actually celebrate just how good T1 was, because we're saying they rightfully won against two of the teams that were favorites over them coming into this event.
When I say it might be the greatest moment ever, Monty, not only does it have all the stakes of like his 5th World Championship, he did it 11 years later, he beat all his rivals. Think about this. I agree with you. BLG in Game 5 probably played like a bloody 8 out of 10 game. Like, it was pretty good. People like Bin and Knight were really fucking going for it, boys. They were like actually swinging for the fences. The point is, Faker just actually unironically did some like 10 out of 10 plays. And also T1 just had a bunch of like great coordination moments where they did the hive mind. If you even listen to the comms, Monty, they barely com half that shit. They were just doing the correct. It's like what Astralis used to do in CS. They weren't really like saying everything they're doing. They just know what the other person's doing, and they do the right move in response. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely great finals to watch.
It might be the most hype moment like ever. It was Game 5 as well, for fuck's sake. All the marble, bro. Don't worry, guys. We'll definitely slow down and go game by game. But even like all the factors, Monty, of like, it's Game 5. Think about how perfect this is. This is where people always miss the narratives, bro. You are aware in Game 5, it essentially was the fucking game from the Swiss system again between the two teams.
Yep.
BLG just went all the comfort.
Got Ari and Jax again.
Yeah.
Yep.
All those ones where you're like, your brain goes, you can't beat Ari, Knight's Ari. You can't beat Bin's Jax. And then T1 went with the comp where it's like the weird one where they're going to have to put, it's like, it was so perfect, bro. Like, this was actually straight from central casting this game. It was fucking unbelievable. I thought it was fire, mate.
Yeah.
It's actually just legit. Like, these are the games you watch esports for, to watch a really amazing game like that.
Yeah. What's funny, Thorin, is I went to bed after Game 3 because I thought
BLG was going to win.
I thought BLG was just going to win, man. Sure. Like, I just thought they were going to win after Game 3, and it was 2 a.m. I was like, shit, man. If I stay up late, I basically ruin my entire day tomorrow, because spoiler guys, if you have kids, they don't actually care if I stayed up till 3 a.m. or not. They're still going to wake me up. So I thought to myself, maybe I'll go to bed. Now, turns out that may have been a mistake. But after we had seen kind of like each of the first 3 games be really stompy, honestly, some pretty, I'm not going to say low quality, but they were high quality games. They were just low excitement games because the snowball was perpetuated really early. And BLG had looked really clean in the games that they had won. That I figured, okay, well, probably this is just going to be BLG 3-1, and I went to bed. And so I was very surprised when I woke up the next morning to see the results. And then it was a pleasure to do those VOD reviews afterwards.
I mean, by the way, even on that angle, what way do you want to do this? Actually, if I just keep going on about Game 5, we're never going to get to that one. What way do you want to do it? Should we rewind and start the series over again?
Sure. And we can do that. I want to talk about the context of Faker as well, because I think there's a lot of nephews on Twitter talking about Faker versus Flash at this point in time, despite the fact that most of these people, or most of the fans, probably didn't see Flash at all, and probably also didn't see Faker's early part of his career. So I think we do have to contextualize that, because there are very legitimate conversations about who is the greatest esports player ever at this point in time. Because, I mean, this kind of proved that last year really for T1 wasn't a fluke. They've been in 3 consecutive finals. They were favored in the first one as well. And arguably, actually, they were definitely favored last year. I think most people favored them this year as well, having seen the results. But BLG would have been the favorite coming into the tournament. But yeah, I mean, I think going game by game here, the first 3 games, again, they're not going to be too interesting. Especially because the first game one was a pretty huge snowball from Guma dying at level 1. And also, I think, this is kind of the game that we should have seen from Gen G. Like, if they're going to first pick Yone, then BLG's like, no, we're not going to take Renekton. We're going to take Ashe Skarner, right? And that's the takeaway that I think was very important. Elk, obviously, accomplished Ashe player in his own right. Jun has been doing amazing on the Skarner for the entire tournament.
I mean, you could argue this series was about like Ashe for fucking bot lane and then like Silas for mid lane, basically, if you look at what they were picking. Yeah. By the way, I have a quick question for you, Monty. Since something mad, like the first 3 or 4 games, somehow bizarrely, Gumayushi just got like first blooded in the very beginning of the game. Was that actually some sort of like level 1 fucking player from BL? Was T1 just sloppy? What's going on with that?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I saw in these games, because it was pretty standard from T1. I was a bit surprised that T1 wasn't being more aggressive with a Braum at level 1, but they were pretty much spread out. And it was some creative pathing by Knight to like sneak in and wrap around and like get in enemy jungle. And it was certainly a risk that BLG took in this first game of the series that ended up paying off. But yeah, it's really hard to be, a team that's playing from behind with Caitlyn, because Caitlyn is so much about getting that lane pressure, getting plates down, rotating around the map, and hitting, power spikes later in the game. And so if you don't kind of keep up that pressure and keep up that momentum, and you do fall behind, it becomes really difficult, I think, to use Caitlyn well. And on top of that, I mean, they drafted a composition with no AP damage, so Skarner just becomes unkillable.
I said this on the past episode, but the joke is, like, the whole thing of, like, you can't let them get Caitlyn because of Gumayushi. It's the other way around. You can, because it puts Braum onto Keria, nerfs the fucking guys like half as good. Like, you actually saw it in the semis and the final. It should have made. Like this fucking Braum was asked for him. The joke is, it's only, like, in the actual last game where he did the fucking super sick, like, ult or whatever, that was even worth anything.
Yeah, and
it was the fucking Poppy I'm thinking of. Never mind, actually.
No,
it was worthless.
Yeah, the thing about Braum with Keria is that it's been kind of a meme recently. It was also the game that he lost against Gen G and didn't look particularly good on it either.
They got picked on that one as well. That was the stomp as well, yeah.
Right. I mean, his historic. He's actually played a ton of Braum in his career. It's his 5th most played champion. Oh. And he has a 61% win rate on it, which is lower than his average. Remember, he's been a good player on good teams for a long time now. But, when we look at his actual individual performances on that recently, it's oftentimes he plays a little bit too aggressively. Oftentimes he will flash in. And for a player that I think is unquestionably the best support player that we saw at this entire tournament at Worlds, it was a little bit weird to see some of his Braum performances in the context of the rest of his games.
If you actually, like I said earlier, look, for the finals, this is where the whole Faker thing will also get taken out of context. He actually wasn't very good over the first 3 games. Game 4, Game 5, he was fire. Like I said, he did some amazing moves. The actual best player for T1 this tournament was Keria for me. Like, he would be my MVP of the whole tournament. I get for the final why they gave it to Faker. He did sort of save the final for them. But for me, Keria was it's like we said, mate, if you think about the positions in the game, support was actually pretty ass at this tournament. Spoiler, the 2 players everyone's blaming against T1 Monty are the supports. Lehens and On, they sort of looked like the ones who entered it. Meanwhile, Keria looked amazing, except for 1 or 2 games in the whole tournament. He was a fucking boss, mate. He was mega.
Yeah, I mean, he was great. And I think he was unquestionably coming in the final, the best support player. And like we talked about, the biggest gap was going to be between him and On. And that, unfortunately for On, also, really showed up, especially in that Game 5, man.
No, that's the worst thing for both of them. One, Keria had the player, but it was just the one off camera where he stopped the fucking TP. But On, bro, this is why I said coming into Worlds, one of the weirdest analyst gaps for me was I watched all those tier lists of players, and dude, all the best people like Dortmund, Cage and stuff had On, I'm not even joking, Monty, as a top 10 player at Worlds. Not even in his role, they were having him as the best support. It was crazy. I think they had him and Delight or something as the best. I don't get that, because to me, I always say this guy for me is like Chinese Hiller-sang. He has some insane plays, but holy fuck does he have some insane ints too. This is one of those guys who never saw an angle he didn't like, mate. He just goes for it every time. It's insane. He just sends it. He just fucking sends it, bro. I thought he was a bit criminal in this final at times, mate. He was a bit
he sent it in this series, and I think a lot of his flaws were papered over, because at the end of the day, BLG still won games that even when he looked individually terrible. I mean, we saw that bar game in Game 3 of the finals that he played against Weibo. He himself was god awful in that game, but they still managed to pull it off. And so I think that he has been good. I don't want to take it away from him. He has been good. His Blitzcrank game was very good in this final. It was really just when the pressure was at its maximum in the last game, and he had some plays that definitely didn't do BLG any favors when it came to his rel engages and everything like that, and his attempts at picks. So that was pretty problematic. I do want to go to Game 2, because we can get through the first 3 games really quickly, because they're not actually that interesting. I think with BLG, they got the kill on Gumayushi early again at level 1, but the problem with this game is BLG made some really pretty bad blunders on the map, and mostly it was about the fact that even though they dove bot tower and managed to take out Zeus with he had teleport up, and with the timers, the death timer so short, he was actually able to TP back into the bot lane in the lane swap, catch almost all of the giant wave that was crashing, and Bin on the other side of the map was actually zoned off the turret, and then T1 was able to set up some really successful tower dives to get themselves back in the game. But as a result, Bin was really playing from a deficit for the entire game, and so the kill was actually kind of a negative trade for BLG in the lane swap, and that was pretty bad for them. And I think one thing that we can look at when it comes to BLG is that a lot of what people would say their underperformance was at MSI was the fact that their lane swapping wasn't really very good. And so I think we saw some of that weakness again here, where you can commit to the dive, you can get the kill, but Zeus traded 1 for 1 and then is able just to TP and catch all the minions. Meanwhile, Bin is entirely zoned off the minion wave and topside, and it sets him up for a really good dive later. So T1 is able to kind of wrest control of this game back. And I also think, one of the factors around people saying Nocturne was a bait pick was the fact that a lot of teams were just playing Nocturne badly. He was incredibly oppressive in the games where he was played well. And we touched on it in the last episode about the way that Genji, where they used Nocturne very well early in the tournament, the fact that Canyon was late and allowed Faker to TP was a really big problem. In the game where Genji played that Nocturne again versus T1, because you just have to deny TPs with that ability. And so when we think about the way Nocturne is used, it's a risky champion, because you do have to execute it well, and it requires very good coordination with your team. But if you can execute it, it does shut down a lot of cross mapping, because players even with TP may not be able to come to the fight. It also is a great pick into Galio, because Galio can't ult during Nocturne ults, which is very important if you're also trying to create pressure or fight around an objective, and Galio's trying to split push or be somewhere else and be applying pressure. So this is a really good game from T1. Very clean snowball after some mistakes, I think, from BLG. But T1, I mean, when they are so good at cross mapping, and if you give them those opportunities, like we saw, they will absolutely crush you. And I think BLG just kind of lost out in the lane swap in spite of the early kill. So yeah, pretty good shit. Game 3.
As you say, though, the first 3 games is basically just whoever gets ahead just snowballs the game, right?
Yeah, and like in game 3, I wasn't really a fan of the Xayah pick in this composition. I mean, the Varus ends up getting banned by BLG, but we typically have seen Xayah picks into like Yone Vi or, you know, Kaisa backline dive compositions. And it really felt, I think, pretty bad to see the Xayah in this one. I guess maybe they were thinking they would have
again, Monty. They did the like historical, like you can't give him Xayah and Caitlyn. It's like, you know, they're not in pure isolation. They mean in context of when that makes sense, guys. It's not like forever. He can't just never be allowed to play them ever. He can do it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we did see falling behind in lane again, and then, you know, a pretty quick snowball for BLG. I think this was the highlight of On's series. His blitzcrank was really good. He was flashing in to get knockups in order to, you know, possibly set up secondary hooks like he did in the mid lane on the faker.
After this game, it just looked like the question isn't, is BLG going to win it? Are they just going to win in game format? It's just like, it's the whole series over. Like,
I mean, this is when I went to bed.
Yeah, this was the haymaker, mate. Normally, this is supposed to be like, you know, you just even the morale of losing this if your team wants to make you lose, you know.
Yeah, and this is where I went to bed, just because I thought, okay, like, I feel like what I felt at this point in time was, all right, you know, they've got a handle on Gumayushi's champion pool. Maybe he's not able to play a lot of the things that would have been desirable in these specific situations.
Also, Elk was smurfing in a couple of these
Elk
games.
Was great.
Really good. Yeah,
you know, On was having good games again. Maybe that advantage has kind of dissipated to a certain degree. They're being aggressive in the side lanes. They're cutting off T1's ability to kind of like push forward and snowball these games. You know, we're doing 3 ADC bans, and it appears to be working for BLG. So this is when I thought to myself, all right, you know, Keria didn't win on Renata Glask. I think Xayah Renata Glask kind of a weird lane anyway. It's not a lane that we see particularly often. I think they were just trying to, you know, play to their individual strengths rather than to a high degree of synergy. So I went to bed. I just went to bed. And unfortunately, that meant that I had to see, you know, game 4 and game 5 later. But they were really big banger games and very, very pleasant to see. Now, the weird thing to me about game 4 is if you asked me who was playing, if you took the team off and you said, who is playing BLG's comp, I say Gen G.
Yeah,
right?
It looks obvious, doesn't it? Yeah.
I say Gen G. It's Gnar, Sejuani, Smolder, Ziggs, and Rakan. And what this composition does extremely
well. Life as well. Those are the 2 teams though that would play this comp. You're right. Yes. It looks like it, doesn't it?
But it is a scaling composition, and the purpose of this obviously is that you've got great wave clear with Ziggs and Smolder ult. You're just gonna kind of turtle and wait for the late game. Now, my concern, and I said this previously, was that when the last time we saw BLG play Smolder, it was against Weibo. And they almost threw that game because even though it was a very even early and kind of mid game, they went for a Drake fight that they absolutely did not have to go for right before Knight hit 225 stacks. Instead of just giving it up, getting 225 stacks, hitting that Smolder breakpoint, and then going for the next fight, they decided to fight this really awkward engagement around the Drake. Knight hit 225 stacks, but his team was already routed and he was trying to run away. And they end up losing that, and then potentially, you know, almost losing that game as a result, or at least allowing Weibo to come back in. So I said, maybe they're going to get drawn into some kind of stupid fights here. Now, it has to be said, like, this is an immense game from Faker, and it wasn't just because of all of the stuff that you saw on camera. I think one of the most important things that happened in this game was that Knight just didn't stack Smolder very quickly.
Oh, he did fuck all, mate, yeah.
Even though he was kind of left alone for the early parts of this game, his Smolder stacks were very, very low. Compared to Chovy, who was getting it like 18 minutes in some of these games. I think Knight was at 24, 25 minutes by the time he hits the 225 stacks in this game. And a lot of that was actually due to Faker, because once Knight started going into the side lanes, Faker was just repeatedly all-inning him on when he was playing Sylas and forcing him out of lane. And so he spent a lot of time just kind of like going back to base over and over and over again. And he wasn't out there trading very effectively. He wasn't out there, getting stacks of champions or using his Q on the waves. And so this was really hard for Knight. And it really delayed a lot of the progress that BLG was making. And then the other thing that was great about this game was really just the fact that you're looking at a team in T1 that knows how to do these long-range engages basically better than any other team in the history of League of Legends. When we talk about these,
this is one of those ones where you've been glazing exactly this aspect of T1 the whole time they've had this roster. That massive fight they had at mid lane where they turned game 4 is like, dude, no other team even attempts engage like
nobody
that.
Sees that.
That was like, this reference. That was like a Dota 2 engage. Where people just fly in off the side of the screen like, you're like, what the fuck? Like, that was baller, bro. That catch doesn't even look like it's there for you, BLG. It looks fine. You can just walk out.
I think the most interesting part of that, Thorin, is that Faker pushed up bot lane, right? And then he faked a recall in a brush and stood in the brush and bot lane waiting to see if they would overextend. Because T1 is so good about faking recalls and getting advantages and setting these like tempo or vision traps around. And so he actually just sets the tempo trap. He pushes up the bot lane to tier 2. Tier 1 turret is gone. And then he waits. He just waits for somebody to appear in that bot lane. And then what he does is he manages. See, the thing about it, Thorin, is that, okay, there's several steps to this. So they actually do see him rotating to mid on a ward, but the other members of BLG are actually, they pushed up to kill the mid tier 1 turret. Yep. But what happens is, specifically because it's a Chemtech rift, he has the empowered blast cone. So he goes way further than he should have through BLG's blue side jungle when BLG's playing on red side. And then he's able to set up this flank. The craziest thing, Thorin, is they missed the Ash arrow on the engage, but they still are able to catch up to them, which is absolutely wild. And it's just
tell that was what they intended to do, as you're saying. They intended to hit the fucking Ash and then he'd come in on it. But like, they still get it off anyway. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Completely
I mean, it's so stupid because Faker gets there, gets huge CC. Owner then, everybody's just committing as hard as they can. Yep. Owner gets there, gets a multi-man Poppy knock-up with Poppy ults, without the channel. You get to see Keria pull off a major ult too. Zeus is there, putting the Rumble ult over the top.
Equalizer across them. Sick. Yeah,
it's an amazing engage. It's an absolutely amazing engage.
What this should be considered, Monty, this actual play here, this sequence for me is like the modern version of the famous season 3 take, like the 2 inhibitors push on OMG. Like, it was the coordination was fucking flawless, bro. Because again, there's no way they can be common that. They just know to do it. Like, so whoever triggers that, they just all made the right play in response. It was incredible, actually. Yeah,
and well, you could tell they were calming about it because Faker's like, look, I pushed up this lane. I'm staying. Let's just see if they push mid, because then we can go. So they were ready for it. I mean, this was a plan that was definitely made by T1, but this is what they're good at, man. And like, what I loved about that play is, like you mentioned, Thorin, everything about that encapsulates T1's style. It's a tempo trap. It's a vision play. It's a long range pick engage, right? It's a snap engage that comes out. Everybody's on the same page.
As soon as Faker, whoever the shot caller is, says go, everyone just goes. They just full commit.
It's beautiful.
No hesitation. There's no, I can do this. Like, people just go. It's amazing, isn't it?
And who would have thought that they would lose Baron off of pushing up in that situation? But because Faker knew somebody was going to catch that wave at tier 2, he's like, well, we can't take Baron now anyway, so I might as well just delay my recall 10 seconds, see if they take the bait. And if they do, we just close the trap on them. It was really, really impressive. And this was really the quintessence of T1's play style with this lineup that made it such a pleasure to watch. And I think really showed off all of their best aspects, right? They get the Baron. They eventually, are able to close this game as a result of the advantages that they gain. Even though, Knight does get the 225 stacks, they continue to get pickoffs. This is also, has to be said, on kind of throws again. He gets caught out in the jungle immediately after that. being somewhere where he definitely shouldn't be, like trying to poke down towards the dragon pit. And that kind of seals the deal for them. So, it is not the greatest ending, I would say, there for Ans Rakan, which has been one of his better champions historically and also at this tournament. And then we get into the game 5. So already, people are thinking, BLG's scaled. Is this going to be a problem? T1 does T1 things, sees the angle that nobody else would ever see, pulls it off. We get an insane faker play and insane execution and follow up by the rest of T1. And then we're into the final game of this series. And as you say, Thorin, BLG pulls out the Jax and the Ahri again, the super high win rate, iconic champions of Bin and Knight. Now, they did lose with them in the Swiss stage to T1, but you could argue that BLG really probably should have won that game. So maybe they were confident not to
victory game. Exactly. Yes.
Maybe you should you could say they were confident in running it back, as it were. Call it hubris, call it what you will. But there were certain things about this game that I was really questioning, Thorin. So first off, they early pick Jarvan in this draft, which I understand. You want to try and take out the Xayah, right? Xayah, when she ults, she can't actually go over terrain. So she's just ulting inside the Jarvan ult. But the problem is like when you get some of these early picks, the Poppy has insane value into BLG's comp. When you're talking about Jarvan engage, Jax engage, the engage coming in from Rel, the ult from Ahri, the ult from Xayah, like the Poppy W value is absolutely nuts here. So slamming that pick, I think, was really good. And then also T1 showing their ability to flex that pick to support. I mean, we know Keria can play. It's not like a super surprise or anything, but it did keep, I think it did keep people guessing until the end. The Xin Zhao is very good into low range compositions. And you do have to be kind of low range a lot of the time if you're going to be dealing max damage with Kai'Sa, right? You want to get in there and, the Xin Zhao can absolutely punish that. You have the Gragas for disengage. But the real question with the composition, Thorin, is you look at this and you say, okay, so we've got Ahri, we've got Kai'Sa, Jax, and Jarvan. What are we trying to do? We're trying to kill Xayah. Okay, we want to get onto her. We're going to dive the back line. But you have Gragas, Jhin, Galio, and Poppy for Peel. Who is supposed to, I understand the theory, but how do you actually kill Xayah? How do you actually kill Xayah? And this isn't a game where you are going to have some sort of insane range advantage on the Xayah, which is a way that you teams like to try and outplay Xayah, right? So you end up with a composition where Xayah, it feels like, is like kind of immortal because you get back onto her, the counter engage, the peel is just so nuts, right? And the value you can get, you're shielding her, you're CCing people, just knocking them straight out of the fight with Poppy. Can you even get back there if Poppy's W is up and standing, between you and Xayah? I think it becomes really, really difficult. And then you layer that on top of that, the issues that On was having, engaging and randomly dying a lot of the time, and it's really tough. I think it's really tough for BLG to do anything here. And this was just an excellent red side draft, I think, from T1. I think they had an answer to this coming in, and for them to, for BLG to come out and say, we're just going with our legendary champs. Now, clearly, T1's already played against that this tournament. They already won. Maybe they're super confident, but for them to have this plan in place, I think was really well done.
And also, despite everything you just said, BLG was in a potentially winning position. They were leading in the game. They were in a good spot. It's just they wanted the hero players.
Yeah.
What's not to like?
Yeah, it was great.
I thought it was straight fire. By the way, another thing as well I want to say about this series is I actually thought, by the way, both Bin and Knight played fabulously in the finals. But I actually want to just highlight, it's another point I make on the Hot Take show, but I won't make the point here. I'll just make it separately. Bro, I'm not even joking. If you think how he played in this entire tournament, Monty, bro, Bin lost this tournament, and this has got to be one of the best top lane performances ever in the history of League of Legends, bro. It was unbelievable how good he was. And by the way, he could just pick the Jax into anything. First pick if he wants. It doesn't matter if there's a lane count. This guy's a cracked out of his mind, mate. And the coolest thing about Bin as well is, he doesn't just do that for the cameras. His game is exactly the same swagger he's giving off with his, persona. He actually, this is, the dream carry top laner, mate. It's the shit. I was saying this on the Hot Take show, so you'll see it soon. Bro, the real bar bummer if your BLG is this. One, if you're Bin, what more were you supposed to do with this tournament? You already played well enough to win fucking Worlds like 10 times over. If you put a list of all the people to ever win Worlds, I think the only one that was better is maybe the Shy. That's it. Everyone else, I don't care. Bin lost. He's better than all the ones that won Worlds, right? Then add Sin as well, Monty. He was supposed to be the one who had the iconic moment. That moment when he dodges the poppy in that fight at the end. That's supposed to be what you win Worlds off. Yeah, that's supposed to be Bin's iconic moment where he wins Worlds. That was fucking unbelievable, Monty. When you pull that moment off, that's supposed to be it. Like, you've just won the game right there. It was because that I want to go back, and this is where I wish people knew more about top lane. Bro, that fight is a nightmare if you're a Jax. What are you supposed to even do? It's like you're saying before, like, you almost have to play it perfectly as the carries of BLG to even get picks or kills in these fights. Like, you have to get everything. It's why, by the way, I even appreciate Knight going for that mad flash fucking charm. Like, you have to do that with this comp. Well, you're never going to catch them. Like you say, they're all going to fucking... So I thought, yeah, Bin actually played it like a baller, in my opinion. He was trying his hardest, mate. He was trying his hardest.
It also was just part of the Faker magic moment at the end with Galio was definitely part of the composition for T1. And I think as good as that team fight was for Bin, you could also argue that Bin, his short range TP to try and flank them after that fight was, after BLG had gotten the upper hand in that fight, may have actually cost them that game, because if they had slow chased T1 instead, because what ends up happening is T1 actually re-engages. And my theory here is that BLG actually thought that Owner had already used Xin Zhao's ultimate. So because basically BLG had blown all of their ults. They had no reason to commit.
Left. Yeah, you could just walk away. You've won. Yeah,
but they had gotten an advantage in this team fight, and I think it was a snap decision by Bin. I'm going to TP over onto the opposite side of the river. We're going to try and collapse on them. But the reality of it was, because Faker and Owner still had their ults, they were able to turn it around and then immediately get on top of BLG. So BLG just bit off more than they could chew, honestly. And I understand why. I think in that moment it looks like the best play, but if you look at it now, I think the best play is just to slowly chase them, right? Not to commit the TP.
Monty,
Try and pick off somebody on the escape.
I'll tell you who absolutely every night is going to wake up. His name is Knight. He's going to wake up in a sweat, Monty, going like, no, I walk back on Ari. Like, bro, if he just didn't go in, like, when he gets caught by that fucking knockup, it's so sad. That's his whole tournament right there, Monty. That's the biggest bummer. If you're BLG, you have so many regrets about this game 5, mate. Like, this is the one you just run over in your mind again and again and again every time you're in a practice game.
I mean, there's also the issue where the rest of BLG was like too eager to engage before Bin got there on the TP. So it was just kind of a bungled play. Because Bin, whatever way you cut it, guys, whether it was Bin's mistake for TPing or whether it was the rest of his team's mistake for being too close and like actually engaging before Bin could get there, the coordination was off one way or the other, and it results in Bin just not being part of that play. And with the Xin Zhao ultimate still up, and the fact that Faker is like pulling off these I mean, really just amazing Galio combos within the gets his ult in, gets the taunts down, everything like that, it becomes really, really difficult for BLG to win because they just don't have the tools that T1's playing with.
I went back and I looked, and if you pause it, right, there's actually a moment, Monty, when they get the kill onto Xayah, where if you're BLG, you have all 5 players alive. This is before he does the TP, when Bin's on the... And meanwhile, T1 has 2 players. It's Zeus and Orna, and then the TP's just coming in. Like, in that moment, you either can take like a fight, or you don't even have to TP. You can either just take a fight and win against the people alive, or you just walk away. And they somehow chose the middle ground that perfectly loses you the most possible. That's why I say, for real, this one moment... Here's what's sad about this. I saw everyone on Reddit doing that thing where you break it down frame by frame. It's like, but he could have done this. And it's like, you can't think that way in the moment. You're a human being experiencing time linearly at the same normal speed as the rest of us. You're not actually able to like review the play, because that's why it's so. This is what is so torturous, Monty. And we can talk about Faker in a minute in this context. What really actually makes Faker goated isn't even his skill and all. It's the poise in these moments. Like, I can tell you, Monty, this is the hardest thing in esports. It's not even to do the 10 out of 10 play. It's to be able to do even just like the right play in a really tense, chaotic moment. Like that is the hardest thing in Counter-Strike. People don't know. If you actually had to ask someone, if you've never ever watched Counter-Strike, everyone tells you the GOAT team was Astralis, right? We don't actually tell you they're the GOAT because someone was the most skilled in the team or they did the best. It's because what they would always do, Monty, is in a moment like this, they would always make like the group play that looks like they have a hive mind, and you'd think they did have time to pause and do a timeout, like, hey, stop, like, hey, you're going to get him and then I'm going to block him off. Like, that's exactly that. I agree with you. This is actually the essence of what's been dope about T1. It's not what a moron will tell you, like they were the best all along and Faker's still the best player and they're just all shit stomping and zero FG kid. It's not that shit. It's the fact that actually, even though they're not the best team, they get the most possible out of their roster. And especially, as I said before, when Worlds just began, bro, their actual understanding of win conditions in comps is unbelievable, Monty. I mean, I have to imagine part of it has to be a factor of being together for over 3 years.
Sure.
Remember, everyone forgets that, Monty. When they had Canada, they even had 4 of them in a semi-final the year before that. Like, that's 4 world semis in a row for 4 of these guys. Like, no one's been able to play together that long in League of Legends. You change after a bloody year or two. Like, this reminds me, if you know the analogy, we had a team, Virtus Pro in CS, who kept the same roster for 5 years, Monty. The same thing happened. They weren't the best at the end because they hadn't made the roster move that you normally do to upgrade player performance. But here's what they did have, Monty. They were the most insanely clutch team like this ever. Because similarly, because you played together for 5 years, if you put them in a 2v3 scenario, they would just make the right play, which again, there's no way they're actually saying, like, you do this. It's like, they just know the shorthand of, like, when I do this sort of a move, you do that. Like, even in this last fight, there's no way that as they're fighting like fucking 1v3, they're coming like, Keria, right, you're going to pause to the team. Like, they just know to do it, bro. They just get the protocols of the game. Like this, that's the thing about this squad. By the way, if Coma did it, fair play to him. I mocked him before, but this was awesome. Like, this team looks very well coached, actually. They seem so cohesive. Well, it's very impressive.
This was also one of the moments, just like the fight in the mid lane and the catch in the mid lane in the last game, that also shows off another key aspect that I've been talking about for T1 for years, which is that they have a very unique synergy, which is the Faker owner engage synergy. And you don't typically see a mid laner and a jungler combining for engages or being the most important engage factor. But they have been mind melded on that front for years at this point in time. And it's again, Thorin, it's the turn that we see there when they both have ult up and the fact that they're perfectly synced to try and re-engage this without Bin's Jax there and try and get the damage done before he can come and get rid of Elk in these team fights. That is really remarkable. And just like his Poppy follow-up and his Poppy ults in the previous game. So this is just a really, really great moment, right? And then not only that, we didn't talk about it. You mentioned it earlier, but another big factor in this game was Keria ulting Knights, who's trying to TP in on the Ahri. Keria pops into mid lane tier 2, and when Knight is trying to engage in the top side because BLG's attempting to come back in this game, that's where they are, that's where he hits him with the Poppy ult, knocks him back into base, and T1's able to take a victory in that fight in the top side. So there's a lot to like about T1 in this game, and they really stepped up. But the frustrating thing with this T1 roster is, at Worlds last year in the playoffs, they struggled a little bit in Swiss, didn't look like they were going to win the tournament, but once they got to the bracket stage, they threw out all of the stuff in the meta that wasn't working for them and went back to double ADCs, and they went back to their bully bot lanes, and they went back to what had been really effective for them. And similarly, T1, now certainly the patch helped them, but they went back to the pick compositions. They weren't trying to play the scaling stuff, the team fighting stuff that Gen G was playing. This Worlds for them was really about a return to long-range engage, to pick compositions, to collapsing on side lanes, to cross-mapping, to clever Barons, like we saw, the surprise Baron that kind of won them game 1 against Gen G. It's a return to all of this, and this is where T1 shines. And they play these comps so well that I think they can be slightly off meta and still have a large degree of success, as we have seen. And it just makes you wonder, why don't they do this for the rest of the year?
Oh, it's true.
Because they do get stuck in the meta sometimes, even when they're not great at it. And I think they are just so good at the things that they do well that they would just, on average, do even better if they committed to this style regardless of what else was going on.
By the way, it's actually a take. If you go back a few episodes on Hot Take Point Made, it was either like the second or third one. There was a similar take that Zabatine actually had about Faker, Monty, which is that he said, if you actually look, it's just Faker. If you look in his whole career, his teams are always doing drafts where all the analysts are like, they've lost this draft. Like, what are they doing with this? And it's like he clearly just has a different vision on how League is played, mate. Because if you think in history, you're right. If you were doing what people claim, I've had this war against the global meta the whole time. If you think global meta thinking is correct, and it's like the logic that ILS always fights against, because the best player did X, X must be the best, right? That's the logic they're using. Well, if you think of the meta, well, one, Monty, we didn't even have the meta from someone. We didn't have Zeri mid and all shit like that. That was barely played in this tournament. And then secondly, if T1 was actually playing the traditional meta, they themselves would have had to play these stupid smolder comps, which, by the way, would have been completely the wrong style of play for them. They would never have won Worlds playing like scaling smolder comps, bro. Like that not only that, they not only wouldn't win, they'd get destroyed by the Gen Gs of the world.
Yes.
Like, it became over. So this actually was for real, like some Doctor Strange shit. One of the only angles they could have taken, which would even have given them a chance to win. And it was still by this. Here's the difference as well, Monty. This one was by a bloody hair. This final was really close. It was really epic shit, guys.
Yeah, and if we don't have the night TP cancel, if we don't have the fight in the mid lane and the turnaround with the Jhin and Galio ults, does T1 win this? Probably not, right? But I think this is also where fans get...
To be fair, you also have to say, right, even though we're saying now they could have, backed off, that's also not really the DNA, also the essence of LPL teams, Money. The LPL type is you wipe them, you keep fighting, and you rampage, you take them over. I'm sure they were just thinking, we end the game here, bro. Like, we win either of those two fights, one of the top player of the mid one, we win either of those fights, it's game over, isn't it? Like, we just won Worlds. That's what they're thinking,
Yeah, and I think probably BLG was comfortable. I don't think it was wrong of them, for example, to do that Smolder Ziggs comp according to the meta. I think Gen G wins that game, right?
Yeah,
I think maybe Hanwha wins that game, but that's not who BLG are. And I think it's proof that even if it would have been an extremely good composition and maybe an ideal composition with the way that the game is played, in the hands of BLG, it just isn't the right stuff because it doesn't facilitate their core strengths.
And I'm also with you, by the way, because I actually think the best thing you can say about the Owner Faker combo is it's not about being the best players. Like you said, it's just about their synergy. It's just about being on the same page and doing the same thing. Because if you ever watch, neither of these are the best fucking players at their role. But when they play together, like you said, they have a unique chemistry. It's true.
And they're weird. I mean, they're a weird team. But it took them a while to kind of get on their feet and figure this out, right? As you say, like many of these members were playing before because all of them were part of that 10-man lineup the previous year.
Yes.
And then it got winnowed down to 5, by summer, but it was with Kana, right? And Zeus wasn't a rookie, right? 3 years ago, he had played a few games. He was basically a rookie. He had played a few games with T1 during the Denny 10-man roster days. And it was really like, that's when he had his like, grand entrance into the scene. But I think when we look at Faker as a player, it's really important to contextualize his career, because I don't think there is an argument that he isn't the greatest player of all time. I don't think there's an argument that he isn't the most clutch player of all time. The argument was, is he the best player right now? And the answer to that is no. But he used to be,
in isolation, without captain elements, intangibles, and all that.
He used to be both the most clutch player and the best player, which was, by the way, if you guys missed that era, just an absolutely devastating combination, like actually unbeatable. Because all of these moments that we saw in games 4 and 5 was what he would do all the fucking time. Right.
The analogy would be this, Monty. If you want to know how cracked Faker is, guys, you know how Knight played most of these games in the final. Imagine he did all that and then he did the Faker shit at the end. That's what Faker was like. He was like impossible. He was like indomitable, wasn't he? He was like early Mike Tyson or something. He just knocked you the fuck out. You couldn't do anything against him.
And it was these moments where he would just show up in a domestic final and all of a sudden he'd be playing mid-Riven and then he would do the most extraordinary thing on mid-Riven you'd ever seen. He would play champions that nobody else played. His mid-Yi was famous. It's like, you never knew what was going to happen when Faker was in the game. He just was a level above everybody else. And he's not that way anymore. But I think that's what makes what he has done in the last couple of Worlds, because, again, He should have lost that game versus JDG where he made the big Azir play last year, and he made the big Azir play. And it really is in these moments, he sees angles or there's some creative streak to him. And I've said this because I've been in esports for 20 years about some of the best players I've seen. There's a reason why in Warcraft 3, which was my first esport, the player Spirit Moon was called the fifth race because he was a Night Elf player. There were 4 factions, 4 races you could play in Warcraft 3. But he had this creative edge to him that allowed him to play in a different way to even other players who played his race. And it's this on-the-fly decision-making and creativity that I really think differentiates the greatest players in esports history. And to be fair to the critics of Chovy, I don't think he has demonstrated that anywhere near the level that Faker has.
Well, no, if you want to compare the two, I'd agree. Here's the problem, though. I do notice a lot of retconning on that topic, Monty. Like, I've already seen people doing exactly that angle of, like, thing about Chovy is he just doesn't have the clutch G. He doesn't just go for it. It's like he literally did that earlier this year, like in the LCK Spring Finals at MSI. He was dope. I agree, by the way. At Worlds, here's the thing. The difference is, by the way, is also what was cool about Knight's performance. People used to bundle Knight like this. They used to say about Knight and Chovy. Here's the thing. The idea they choked at Worlds was always nonsense. It's more like they just actually played too conservative when they got scared, if you know what I mean, Monty. It's like they never made like the game blunder that cost them the game. That would be like choking or like what they did instead was they would just play incredibly safe. Like they a bit like actually, I mean, I wouldn't say he did it in this game, but if you go to that Swiss game of BLG and T1, maybe like played a bit too safe when he was on the RE. You know, he was fed, he didn't do anything, didn't go for any play. He did in this game. He went for the flash charm, like I say. The difference is, I agree, Faker is like a 10 out of 10 on that scale. The others, like their problem is they're 9 out of 10 and everything else, but like Chovy's like, I don't know, a 7 out of 10 on this scale. And the problem is, if you play a Faker, you might need to be 9 or 10. Yeah, you need to be up there.
And I think the issue is
that it's like that you know that classic quote. This is actually the quote that summarizes it the best. I'll find the exact version. Actually, I think I can remember it. You know the quote that goes like this, Monty? It goes something like talent can hit a target that no one else can hit, but genius can hit a target that no one else even knew existed. That's how I would define the Fakers and the flashes and the simples. And when they play, like I've actually given this analogy before in Counter-Strike and people don't know. Right before I've only acknowledged Simple was the greatest Counter-Strike player. I've told this story before. A lot of the actual talent used to criticize him, Monty, and go like he's playing too aggressively, or you know he gave this round away even if he could have won it. And what I actually had to tell people over time was, yeah, but bro, he's actually winning those rounds where we're saying he's doing the wrong positioning. Like some at Mantle, like 75% of the time. So eventually we're going to have to acknowledge he actually has like a higher level understanding of the game than us. And basically we're saying correctly for most people that that's the wrong player, like a minus EV player. But for him, because of his skill set and what he understands about, we're wrong. And by the way, it was even basically confirmed by some of his teammates years later. They said like, actually, even as like an individual player, he was just way ahead of like the macro of the round and stuff like that, you know? So like, I do agree. The problem is people always want the best player to just be based on like raw skill. So like in that case, obviously people like Knight and Chovy instantly fit the build up and they're fucking unbelievably talented and mechanically insane. But I agree with you. If you actually want to pick like the best quality to win isn't actually even to just be the best skilled player. It's to be the person who does the clutch play, of course. That is probably the most OP skill in esports. If you think about it, Monty, go to anyone in history, even people like, if you don't know guys, but if you've ever heard the name Stefano in StarCraft 2, I don't think he was ever the best player, but he was incredibly clutch. He had like that mentality where he would always make the big play. And
I mean, he could. Here's the thing about Stefano: he could have been the best player. He just had no work ethic. What was amazing about him was he was as good as he was when he just didn't practice the game. That was crazy.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me, there is one other detail as well that is worth referencing. Right, look, obviously with Faker, you're going to get a million threads of cope, Monty, about why like he's having issues. But you know, people said before this final, you might have seen it on Reddit, there was a post that said something like that Faker was like testing a new posture that was making him not have like wrist injury. He did play way better in some of these games, man. He did do some moves that he didn't normally do. Like, so I don't know, I won't make it like the panacea, but it seemed like he did do something that leveled his mechanical game.
He also changed.
If I told you before this tournament, Monty, that Faker's going to win Worlds playing Silas, there's no way. There's no way, bro. But he did. And he was actually really good on it, mate. He was actually pretty good at times, you know.
Yeah, he was very good on the Silas. Good on the Akali as well. Good on the Galio, but we've come to expect that from him. I mean, it's not like he's had bad Akali and Silas, but he's had very good Akali and Silas play in the past. Yes. But obviously his injury, you know, we've talked about this whole year, but when we don't have information that is actually disseminated by T1 about the state of his injury, and sure, you don't want to telegraph that he's injured to your opponents, and that might be a private thing to him. But we basically just had to speculate on the state of his injury because it appeared from his play that he was still injured. And as we said, I don't think it's necessarily weird now that we've seen this at 2 back-to-back Worlds that when he has a break after summer, right, and before Worlds, because technically he played at the Asian Games last year, but it was actually just Chovy playing 90% of the games, and they put Faker in just so he could get the military exemption and win the gold medal against one of the really, I forget which really bad team they put him against, but one where they were basically guaranteed to win anyway. So when I say he got a break, I mean, he got a break even though he was playing, quote unquote, in the Asian Games. But I really think that this schedule that he's on throughout the year, when they do things like go to, they go all the way to the finals in spring, then they immediately go to MSI, then they go get back into summer, then they go to EWC. He doesn't have any time off. And I really wonder, because both at Worlds last year and this year, we saw a really, really big jump in his mechanical ability when he had some time off after summer playoffs and before Worlds. And I just wonder how much that break and helps. And also, there are just fewer games at Worlds. He is playing, when he's in LCK, he's playing 2 best-of-3s a week plus all of his normal practice. Isn't it interesting that at Worlds, when he's playing fewer games, when there's longer rest periods, when there's a week between best-of-5s, and especially these weeks where they can't even practice that much, guys, because the longer Worlds goes on, there's nobody to practice with anymore. So your scrimming is actually quite limited. So I wonder how much these factors affected Faker's performance. I also want to bring back the fact that they weren't able to play solo queue for a lot of this year due to the DDoSing in Europe. How much of a factor was, or DDoSing in Korea, how much of a factor was it that they could go to Europe and play solo queue again? Because we never got a resolution to whether that was actually fixed really in Korea or not. The complaints just kept coming out from T1 saying it's not possible. It's not possible. We do know that the DDoSing issues were isolated kind of to the Korean and maybe the Japanese server as well. But there was never really a resolution on that about whether, they had the most practice. But I think for a lot of this year, they probably weren't getting as much individual practice as they could have. And then finally, as you say, there were, tidbits coming out that Faker had changed his posture and he had changed his mouse and he had changed potentially his mouse grip as well. And how much are these things helping? Who knows? Maybe he got a new doctor to help him with the pain or the ergonomics, but it's all of these factors together.
If you don't know, when Monty's gone on about his grip, I can't believe you said doctor there. So I'll have to mention it. Remember, that was that thing in that leak of Dr. Disrespect where he was like, I'm gripping it. Boom. And he's just when he was having a DM with some dodgy person online, let's just say. He actually said that, I'm gripping it. So I think I know the doc that helped him out, Monty. You know what? I think he got in contact with a 2-time back-to-back, whatever. You get the premise. By the way, I will say, Monty, there's another thing that I actually do appreciate. I normally bang on Riot for being so bad with narrative shit. Bro, I don't ever glare. I'm not one of those people, Monty, where it's when you bring up the World's theme or some random hype video for Blast or something. I don't go, oh my God, it's insane, because I could do better. Bro, the actual hype for this final was mega. That piece, that fucking preview piece. And by the way, this is why, I hope people understand this, this is why you always seed as many of the narratives as you can, because they're going to blossom later. Bro, it is now like a movie that he actually said in that fucking preview, Monty, that insane line where he goes for those that always believed in us, no matter what, the 5th trophy is for you. That was some of the movie, bro. When he considered he actually now won it like a hero. I even said this on Twitter, bro. He won the 5th game 11 years after his first World Championship using an ability called Hero's Entrance, where you actually fly in like fucking Superman and save the day. That's too on the nose, bro. It's too on that's some simulation shit. This isn't real.
It's the anime, dude. It's the anime arc, and this is just real. The fact that T1 is an anime, I guess.
That was
because
my joke. I said the best anime in League of Legends is Faker's career, not Arcane. It's actually, dude, this is the best shonen anime ever made. He's better than Goku. What are you talking about? He's way better.
Yeah, exactly. You have all the struggles. He ends up in 4th place. He's 1 game away from not even qualifying to Worlds against his bitter telecom rival. It's crazy.
Like, obviously, if you did a movie, you'd also just do a pause there, wouldn't you, right before Game 5? Like, I'm about to be eliminated from Worlds. And then he just wins Worlds after that. Like, what? That is beyond fairy tale shit, isn't it? Like, that you would think that was hackneyed in a film, bro. You'd think, oh, it's a bit on the nose. Come on. Make it realistic. It's just too good. That's why I say if you know the context, it actually might be the best moment in esports history. It's bonkers.
By the way, this League of Legends anime has been pretty crazy for the last 3 years. Because first off, we get the Deft season of that anime,
True.
and then it goes right into the Faker season.
Yeah, exactly. There was some red wedding shit on that one. True. Surely an analogy. That was Ned Stark getting his head cut off. That was like season 1 was Deft. That was Faker was supposed to win again. Then he got. By the way, even that Monty, if you go after Game 5 of them losing that DRX file and go, don't worry, they win the next 2 worlds. Like, what? Bro, I've just seen them lose to DRX. Like that the stories are too crazy. The narrative stack is actually insane on this one, bro. But the payoff is insane. It's fucking mental, in it.
And as long as you appreciate it for the right reasons, because the thing is, if you just pretend T1 was, actually just going to win this thing the whole time, then we can't appreciate the fact that they had an 11-7 record in summer, that they were losing to fucking D plus Kia, who was bad, and they almost lost to KT.
At one point in time. I think they lost to Fear X, didn't they? I think they did.
Later in the season, yeah.
It's mental on it.
I mean, they did not have a good summer. They did not have a good summer performance, but it makes this win even more extraordinary, right? That's what, by discounting, a lot of the things that actually happened, and saying like, oh, they were definitely going to win this no matter what. It makes the actual payoff way less good. So I don't understand why we're doing that.
You know my style. If I ever reference anyone in chat, you may as well flee for the hills, because it's always a death sentence. I'm never coming in like, hey, great comment. So there's a guy in the chat did say Monty, and I'll only lightly roast him because it's more the idea that's stupid, not him. Just to save there. Right. Here's the problem, Monty. There's a guy in the chat was even like, but why do you think they were so weak in summer? No, like that's perfect. You've encapsulated exactly what our issue with fans is. It's the other way around. The real question, Monty, as we've just gone over for an hour, is how did they do this? It shouldn't be possible.
Makes no sense.
Your take as a pleb is this was inevitable. Faker is the GOAT. He was always the best. So why did he ever have even one game? Except it wasn't one game. For the last year and a half, it's been like half the games, it feels like. Why does he just not look that good most of the year? That's the question, bro. But it's the opposite way, though. It's not. It's bizarre. No, what's weird is that a player who's 11 years into his career could still do a GOAT move in Game 5. That's the weird part. And that is what should be studied for years. Not like, why were they bad? They're not actually the top team. You're aware of that, guys. They were. But here's the worst thing, Monty. This is the worst part about this narrative, is you take any of those 3 years, 2022, 2023, 2024, beyond maybe times when people thought Keria was the best. Nobody has any of these players, not only the best in their role, even close. Bro, when was Gumayushi anyone's top 3 ADC in the world? When was fucking, like, Zeus maybe had times he was, I'll give him that one.
Yeah,
Honor,
he did.
Nobody's ever said Honor's the best jungler in the world, bro. No one's ever said those words out loud, like, ever. I don't even think T1, the joke is in T1, you could do the meme of, like, Faker going, Honor isn't even the best jungler in T1, just looking at himself, you know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, no, so I agree with you. The genius of T1 is, like, the synergies, the way they all follow each other. By the way, they're even not willing to do the classic move. They all will commit to a plan. Whether it's good or not, they just commit to it. All 5 do the same plan. That is OP.
Owner did a very good tournament both this year and last year at Worlds. Sure. And like, Owner's highs are very high, but he's also been the worst player on the team at times, right? They struggled, man. I mean, you would not have expected Keria's performance after seeing his summer performance either, because he looked really ropey. You would not. I mean, we didn't expect this team. It was kind of a miracle they ended up like stumbling through the qualifiers to even make it here. And part of that was definitely them having a bad meta, but there was this shadow that was hanging over T1, both in terms of the solo queue, the DDoSing, the struggles with the meta, whatever was going on with Faker's injuries / mental health.
Gross. Here's what's gross. Because technically, Monty, the reason T1 got to go to Worlds is because KT lost Game 5. That means Pioshik just stopped Chovy winning another Worlds. He just stopped him winning another Worlds, bro. He probably would have won this motherfucker if bitch-ass Pioshik let him breathe. Let him live, man. Let him live. Let him live. Stop pulling him down like Gollum on fucking Frodo, you twat. I'm Samwise Gamgee. Get the fuck out of here. Let him live.
Might be my least favorite player of all time.
Because the worst thing is, like,
it used to be Kuro, but maybe Pioshik is more of a saboteur than Kuro at this point.
Because the problem is he's doing some, like, everything he does is like a reverse Midas touch on everyone's life. It's death and darkness just follows this guy around wherever he touches, just withers on the vine. It's sick. It's sick.
But yeah, I do think like
people thought World Champion League of Legends. You know my boy Knight, just a bomb who never fucking won it. That guy, like,
Chovy.
Get me out of this world. Get me out. Especially because Monty, I know this must tilt you because I know Dom. This is here's the thing. Shout out to people in chat and on social media because you'd think after this many years, Dom would be like, grizzled and you wouldn't be able to get to him. He'd have really thick skin. They found like exactly how you reverse engineer the ultimate way to tilt Dom because you have to frame it this way, Monty. It's not just that you even say Faker's better than Chovy. You phrase it this way. You make it sound like the rest of the year doesn't really count. And like, LCK finals, by the way, I still think one of the most prestigious tournaments you can ever win in League of Legends. We're supposed to pretend like that's like, an online cop or something and not even relevant. And the idea is it all builds like an actual old school video game where you're going through the levels. And the final boss, when it really counts, is just Worlds playoffs. So as a result, Monty, are you ready? This is the way you have to frame it. You don't just frame it that Chovy's not as good as Faker. You frame it that Faker's like the final boss at this level of here, always. And Chovy hasn't even like reached towards him yet. Chovy's like the little beggar reaching to Jesus, like, please, Jesus, please heal me. I've got leprosy, please. And then Faker's like, not yet, Chovy. You're not yet on my level. And when they phrase it that way, I know Dom just spirals. Because obviously every other day of the year except Worlds, like Chovy's way better than Faker. What are we talking about? But in that, they've made a way that it sounds like, we're idiots for saying Chovy was better. He never was one. He was all fake the whole time. We're just fools just flying into it. Oh, I can't handle it. It actually helps me even describing it like that. Oh, I hate it so much. I hate it.
My favorite thing is how people describe Faker as though like there has to be some correlation. And look, maybe there is. Maybe this is the craziest part of Faker, that basically the correlation to the belief in the importance of a tournament is directly correlated to Faker's skill. So if they're down, if the fans are downplaying LCK, then it doesn't matter that he wins that because he has to hit the magic clutch threshold, and the clutch threshold can only be unlocked when the fans believe that it is the most important. Not when Faker believes it, not when he really wants to win. I mean, obviously, guys, if Faker could just turn this on, maybe he wouldn't be hitting his head into a wall in summer season. Do you think he didn't want to turn it on at that time? It was really just your belief that like pushes him over the clutch threshold. It can only happen at Worlds, by the way. It can only happen at Worlds.
I mean, here's the thing, Monty, technically, all of that is accurate because he actually didn't even try to win Worlds for himself. He just said, I'm playing like shit, so this Worlds, I'll just play for you fans. And then he won you fans the Worlds. Like, no, whatever. Listen, even though I just gave praise because earlier that's sick the way it hit. When I just described it that way, I almost want to throw up. Oh, it's gross. Why are you even saying that? Why do you all believe shit like that? Because that's the worst thing, Monty. Let's be real. All cards on the table. What you're describing is true. T1 fans on some level actually do believe them at home like this, Monty, like, please, Faker, come on, please. It's like a spirit bomb and it gathers all their energy. And then Faker's just like, doing like some Dragon Ball Z. It's so ridiculous, isn't it? I know. They believe that to grow. They actually believe it as well. That's why the framing was like the ones who believed no matter what. By the way, fans, I'll just put this out there. You ready, Monty? This will blow your mind. Why did he put no matter what? What do you mean? They're the best team, Monty. Of course you believe in them. What do you mean, Faker? The ones who believed always, no matter. You mean like when you were fucking doing like your own like pseudo fucking crypto Faker fucking corky packages into team fights and insta dying, then bashing your head off a wall? You mean in that moment it might have been appropriate to, I don't know, not believe you're going to win Worlds? Like, see, to all the lunatics and maniacs out there who are locked in cells, believing things in a padded cell, this one is for you. Like, can I get up with the mental asylum now? Because Faker just won. No, sorry, but you did get to enjoy that great game 5 anyway. Like, lock him up. Like, what? It's nonsense, isn't it? I know. It's just
I wish Faker. I bet Faker wishes some more of those Spirit Bomb, energy providing fans would actually watch him at MSI or at in his domestic finals, so he could win some of those.
Here's the thing, Monty. Technically, I told you this earlier. Faker is at this level, like Dom knows. He's at the top level where he's already won LCK 10 times. That's not important anymore. That's irrelevant. MSI, he won it 2 times years ago, mate. He doesn't need to win it more. All he's trying to do is win Worlds. That's the only tournament that counts. Oh, yeah, and also, Monty, he also wins EWC because that's another World Cup. So only in World Cups does Faker try, and he's 2 for 2 in World Cups this year. So what do you want? Your boy's Chalky, he's just winning little trinkets like the LCK. MSI, that's nothing, bro. Mid-season, it's Worlds or nothing, bro. EWC, that's what we're all about.
I also like how all the T1 fans are like they're medieval alchemists, right? So they have to believe that there is some sort of equivalency factor, and so they believe that somehow Faker traded these domestic titles and these MSIs in order to win Worlds. Like he had to trade all of these, and so the argument always goes, well, those don't matter. Don't you think a player would have? Don't you think Chovy would sacrifice all his LCK wins in order to win one Worlds? I'm like, I mean, he's not an alchemist, right? That's not how this works. And here's the question, guys. Don't you think Faker would have liked to, I don't know, have won all those MSIs and domestic titles as well as win Worlds? That sounds pretty dope. Why can't we just do it all? I
agree. They do make it sound like, yeah, it's like a trade up. Like, look, which do you want? Do you want these 5 LCK or do you want to trade it up into one World? It's like, oh, I'll take the Worlds. Like, why not? I'll both. If you're the best ever, just win it all. Just win it all, mate. Faker did. Just do it. Just win it all. Oh, by the way, I already knew dickheads would do this. You know how they already were ready to crumble? Haha, I can't wait to see Monty and Thorin. It triggered that T1 one. No, there's a better one. You guys are so dumb. You don't know. I'm always one step ahead of you motherfuckers. I tweeted this the second T1 won Worlds. Do you know they're all going to go, Monty? Thorin must be on suicide watch. Reckless just won Worlds. No, guys. I'm very used to Reckless being completely carried and winning championships. That's his career. There you go. That's 10 plus years in the making, boys. There you go.
Also,
I'm fully aware of that.
Why would I be triggered about T1 winning Worlds, right? Do you know nothing about my actual history, number one? And number two, guys, I predicted T1 to win all 3 of the last 3 Worlds. I predicted them in 2022. I was wrong. 2023, I was right. 2024, I was right. And if you know anything about me, the thing I love more than anything is being right. So if I'm predicting them, you can better believe that I am happy when they actually win. Okay, guys? That's how it works. So I'm not triggered.
But yeah, I've actually found it. I think this guy's not even trolling. The key thing is, I hate when they're trolling. I think this guy's being serious. Here's what will trigger you. This guy said in response to your shit about like not wanting to win LCK so you can win Worlds. Like, this is so cancer, bro, because they actually believe this. He goes, it's called bandwidth. We're asking too much to win all LCKs and Worlds. Worlds is enough for GOAT status. Right, all I'm going to say is this, Monty. I'll just put it to the audience. Who in 2022 actually thinks DRX was the best team of the year? Can someone explain it to me? Because logically, T1 fans must say DRX was the best team of 2022. That's all that matters. Worlds, bro. Like, they won it. They won Worlds. They even beat T1. Surely they're the best team. We all know they're not. We all know it. Come on. Your eyes tell you it's not. It can't be true. Pioshik, I just said it earlier. It ain't true.
But I do think it's nice to be able to talk about the actual narratives of T1 because it does make their accomplishment even more ridiculous. And I think undoubtedly what I was going to say earlier, Thorin, is that League of Legends fans are spoiled in a way because sure, there are other games that get players of Knight or Chovy's caliber, right? But the crazy thing is it's not like every fucking esport gets a faker, guys. Most of them don't get a faker. That's what's so insane about what is going on right now. And you have to really appreciate that. And what's so wild to me is that a lot of these fans that exist within League of Legends, they are so obsessed with faker that they can't even see how great some of these other players are. And you know, you guys really are spoiled to get this many great players in one game. You know, it's not every day that comes around. Even comparing Faker to a guy like Simple. Simple's only now trying. First off, Simple came later than Faker, and second off, Simple's trying to write the second half of his career arc right now, right, in Counter-Strike. So it's like he's not really at the same level that Faker is, wouldn't you say?
That one's a bit tricky because the problem with Simple is he doesn't have the same, like, he didn't win the most majors or anything like that. So you can't, like, compare to that aspect of Faker's career.
Sure.
Here's the difference. I think Simple had more years of being, like, the best player or, like, top 3 player. So you might have had a better body of work of, like, individual player. But obviously, like, the problem with Faker that I've always thought was OP is, like you said earlier, bro, he had everything. He literally, that's why I always say Faker in some ways is the only player that is comparable to Michael Jordan. Because, like, that, except for the fact that Michael Jordan was, like, the best player on all the teams. But if you look, like, they have simultaneously the resume that's like goated, but then they also have the body of work that's goated too, and then they have the insane longevity, everything. You've just got everything you need. So,
I mean, at least
I do
Faker...
think the comparison though, here's the difference. If you want body of work, maybe Simple had more. The problem is after that though, the other people with longevity are all in the ones where it's like Quake or beat 'em ups. It's like there's like half as many people play those games, guys. Here's the problem with all GOAT discussions. No one ever compares the games, Monty. They talk like they're all playing the same game. Here's the real reason why I think Flash is the greatest to ever play esports. Because I actually think StarCraft Brood was an incredibly difficult game that's like maxes out both like skill, it has a really good skill expression if people don't know with the micro, but also like the tactical and strategical side is incredibly deep. It is like chess basically, the esports equivalent. Whereas like the problem is in this analogy, this is like Faker won in checkers. But so I always say the angle you want to go with if you want to steelman Faker as the GOAT of esports is you go with the angle that the difference every other game has to League is League's the only game every major region tries to play. That's the dope part because that means you have had the entire esports.
Just the sheer number of players too. I mean, the fact that we're talking about 100 million players of this game.
There's a bazillion people tried to be the best. He was still the best overall. And then think about this, Monty. The entire Chinese esports industry essentially threw like what fucking $250 million at trying to beat this guy. Like it's actually fucking like you couldn't get higher stakes than that, could you? Like every major region plays this game. It's still a massive game to this day. There's another thing. If Faker had won, but he'd won a bit like if you win in StarCraft 2 now, where it's like years after the game's prime, the game is still massive. Remember, LCK was breaking viewership numbers. Like he's still winning now. Like this is one of those takes, Monty. I'll give you the analogy. You ready? I'll really make him mad because I'll now compare me to Faker. You know when people tell me, Monty, a shit angle to say I'm rubbish is this, Monty. They go, you're only known now because you were around 20 years ago. It's like, no, it's the opposite to that. If you were only relevant 20 years ago, you won't be famous now. You will lose your relevance and no one will care who you are. Spoiler, people don't even care about the season 2 and season 3 pros in League, bro. Like no one talks about I'm a cutie pie or Void. You don't talk about any of these people
or
anymore.
Shy. People just know the Shy now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually the other way around. What makes people like Faker GOAT isn't that he was the GOAT back then. It's that he can still steal championships now. Like that's also the other way you have to frame this, Monty. The real genius of what Faker did these last 2 years is he stole away worlds that for him don't matter as much. He's already got by far the most. But those are worlds that could have gone to Chovy and tonight, and that would have built their case against him, their resume angle. That's the genius thing you got to do. Because if you don't know, by the way, the best analogy for that is tennis, Monty. Like, even though I'm sure these players do love to play the game, I'm actually so sure, bro, that part of the reason people like Federer and Nadal played till the bitter end is because they already saw Djokovic came along and he was winning loads of Grand Slams, and they were like, mate, I have to try and take everyone I can from him. If I retire now, he just gets like 5 extra for free. Like, I've got to, like, if I can even steal 2 back, it changes like the story in history. It's why if people don't know, this is real as well, Monty, and this is dope. You know, do you want to know the actual real reason? This is supposedly true. Do you know the real reason why The Last Dance was made by Michael Jordan?
Why?
Have you ever heard this? It's a fucking amazing anecdote, mate. Right? What happened is, supposedly, when in 2016, the Cavaliers won that one where they came back as the only team ever in the finals to come back from 1-3 down to win the final over that Warriors team that was like the one that had won the most games in history. Because that was such an insane accomplishment, that's when people did start to say on TV, maybe LeBron is the GOAT. And supposedly, Michael Jordan had this footage the whole time for real, and he'd just been sat on it. And then people in his circle claim, like, this is one of those like TMZ type things, they claim that he was just like, you know, like activate code 7. Yeah, like that, essentially, like, basically like remind these motherfuckers who I am. That's basically what they claim he did, which is
they
like
forgot
gangsters.
About Dre, man. Exactly. Motherfuckers act like they forgot about Dre.
By the way, there's people who've already seen that documentary who are like, actually, you are the GOAT, Michael. Yeah, it worked. It worked before it actually did. That's dope.
Just manipulate the narrative. It is amazing, but I think you're right. I mean, I said this on my stream while I was watching this, where I was like, what would it be like if Knight had won these two titles on two different teams instead, right?
Yep.
And then at that point in time, Knight's like, ooh, Knight's got 2 titles, Faker's got 3. Is Knight going to overtake him? It shifts the entire narrative just in such a crazy fashion. And now, it went from Knight maybe nipping at Faker's heels to it is basically over for Knight. Knight will never win 5. Period. Right. Period. Just not going to happen.
Yeah. It's like the analogy is, that's why actually, here's a good one for you. You remember this? In the early days in the NFL, that's why actually Brady winning those early ones over Mahomes was a big deal. Like, I don't care about the whole Brady's the GOAT thing, but if you want to go on ring count, it's going to be really hard to get the 7 rings now for your Mahomes because you had 2 that you could have won there. You lost those 2. Look, that hurts, of course. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you.
Yep.
So here, I'll do a question that's sort of framed like a pleb would frame it. Just I think it's a more interesting way to phrase it. If you're a pleb and you do believe, Monty, that this shows that, like, Knight and Chovy just aren't complete players and they haven't gone to the level of final boss Faker and all that. The question is this. People probably saw where Faker himself actually said he thinks eventually Chovy will win Worlds, basically, because obviously he's really good. Do you think, actually, does this change anything about how you look at, Chovy, for example? Like, does this mean next year, will he be more tempered? Will you buy into it if you like Smurfs spring again and he's the best player in the world? Will you buy back in it? Does this change your thinking of Chovy?
Because the thing about Chovy is that his floor is just so high and the consistency of his play and the way he plays is just textbook for the way that you want to play League of Legends. He creates enormous advantages for you in lane. He's mechanically spectacular. He rarely makes mistakes. Especially with his team fighting or the lane assignments. He's evolving into a much better shot caller, as we saw this year with the absence of Peanut and him stepping into that role with Lehens. And so, yeah, Chovy has had a very distinct evolution to his career. He has gone from the mid laner who is great at laning, but maybe clueless about macro, doesn't know where to be on the map, right? And a lot of the problems come from the fact that he's too selfish when it comes to farming. And that narrative really went away in 2022. He started to play much, much differently, especially with the start of the Peanut iterations of that roster, because Peanut was the guy who could basically mind control him to go to the right places on the map. But I think what's fascinating about Chovy is now that he's in that shot calling role, he himself understands. So I think Peanut taught him probably a lot about macro and a lot about shot calling. And I think the problem with Chovy, though, is where is the play that puts him over the top, right? Where is it? And, I think one of Faker's powers, honestly, and I have no idea what the dynamic within Gen G in regards to Chovy and his teammates is, but one of the things that has always been undeniable about Faker is the aura, right? It's the players play worse into him, but his teammates also. Imagine this roster.
They're making the joke on the broadcast as usual, Monty, but it is true. Faker just being in the server is like a global taunt. People go so horny to kill this guy. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yes.
It's crazy, bro.
And he uses, he knows that. He uses that, obviously, because he forces people to overextend, and then he tells his teammates to go somewhere else. Chovy's only 23. Chovy is the same age as Faker's teammates. And also in Korean culture, having the Hyung, the older brother relationship is very important. But if you are these players coming into this roster, and many of these players were rookies who debuted with Faker, right? You have the aura, the Faker aura, as well as the Korean age hierarchy. And you do wonder if that is part of the success, because Faker does have absolute control over this team. Faker was the de facto coach of this team for a long time after they fired coaches, right? We know that his word is everyone is the bond that holds this team together. They will do what he says. And I do wonder whether Chovy has the same level of leadership control, or even if he exerts it within the team. Because a lot of the time, mistakes that are categorized as Chovy's are mistakes his teammates are just engaging, and I assume he gave them the information that he can't be there, or he doesn't have TP, or he makes a call. Maybe his voice is too quiet. I don't know. Maybe he's growing into that leadership role. So he still is much younger than Faker, and I still think he has a lot of his career ahead of him. But that is also, I think, one of the big positives for Faker is that Faker is so experienced. He's seen everything. He knows how he wants to play the game, and he is the one calling the shots. We now know, thanks to last year, what happens when he's not on the team. They don't know what to do. Players like Zeus and Onar are mechanically stellar, right? Onar, as a jungler, barely misses, like he rarely misses any kind of engages, even with skill shots, right? And that's part of the synergy with Faker. But when Faker isn't there telling him when to engage, it doesn't go so well. And maybe there were too many stars, because Genji's roster was kind of a super team. Maybe there are too many cooks in the kitchen with this roster. Maybe nobody was willing to take control and be the in-game leader in that situation and really force a certain play style or a certain framework upon the game. But that's not a T1 problem. Like T1 has a very, very distinct framework that they play under. And just having that consistency also leads, I think, to these results where the players just know what to do because they've been in these scenarios so many times before. So I think, look, I'll keep buying into Chovy. It's not like we've seen no development from Chovy. That would just be a lie. But yeah, I think he has not been that pivotal factor. Like where, Chovy at some point in time, I do think needs to ascend and be the reason why they take these games. There's no excuse.
I swear, I actually do think I saw on Reddit somewhere at this point, but I thought it was a very good one, actually, which is the difference is, like I said earlier, Knight did do those things. It just didn't come off. Like when he did that attempt at flash charm on the fucking, he was going for the game, but he was trying to make the hero. That was him doing the Faker play. Just didn't pull it off, unfortunately. I agree with you, sort of. It's why I've always said, Monty, the reason why, if you actually can see how good he is, you double down on people like Chovy, is because he is like the example of Astralis in Counter-Strike. If people don't know, they were the notorious chokers for year after year after year, but once it ticks over and you don't have that as a negative anymore, the fact that you're the best means you just win everything. Like as you've seen with LCK, Chovy had the same exact block there. Remember, Monty? He had a million finals. He wasn't winning. Then when he actually got like a really good team and his head was in the right place, he's unbeatable in LCK now. So that's why I'm very interested to see what he win in the future years. One thing you touched on there, though, is the other reason I hate when people over-index on the Faker topic with every T1 win is I always say this, there is a finite amount of credit. Like, here's an example, Monty. When people go, well, these people in society are important too. By definition, they're not important because important is a relative term. If they are the least important of all of us, then you going, they really matter, isn't the case. It's actually the least important. That's just the way finite amount of praise and resources work. So if you say Faker is the best, blah, 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 what I notice the people you always steal it from is the actual players who are consistently the best. Like, bro, I'm telling you right now, the most underrated player in T1, I don't care if this makes people mad, is Zeus, bro. Because the only time I ever fucking hear about him, Monty, is when he does badly. When he has a time like when he'll just have a period like in spring he wasn't that great in the playoffs, or in summer he might have like a week or two where he's a little bit off. People talk like this guy is a bomb. But I think here's the thing. I think Keria is the most influential because like the champion pool impact he has. But I think Zeus is the best player on this team. This guy is mega, bro. Like I know everyone's going to do that thing of like, yeah, but when they had Popey, they all sucked. Mate, you know what? Here's an angle for you guys. Send Zeus to Gen G and let Chovy have Zeus and let's just see how that goes next year. And you know what? Faker can have anyone you want. Take any top lane you want. I think Zeus is fucking mega, mate. He's really good. I think he's great in this Worlds too. He's dynamite player, mate.
Zeus also takes the fallen draft more often than not. I mean, he blind picks more than almost any other professional top laners in Asia, right? Yes. Now, sometimes we could argue this is not a great drafting strategy by T1 to have him just like blind Aatrox and TF every game. In fact, it probably contributed to a lot of losses. But he is good enough or confident enough in a lot of these matchups. And also his champion pool is, the fact that Genji felt that they had to respect the Yone in the top in their series by early picking that Renekton, I think tells you what you need to know about the surprising tricks that T1 can pull when Zeus is on this roster. Do I think that Zeus is the greatest top laner of all time? No. I mean, I prefer Keen as a top laner. That's my preference of how the ideal top lane should be played. Is I think that Keen's versatility and his more selfless nature is a better fit in terms of conventional top laners. But T1, Zeus is a great player. He's among the best, and I think they use his particular quirks and strengths very well in the same way they use Keria's particular quirks and strengths very well, right? they are able to get a lot out of Zeus's carry performances. So, I mean, Zeus is an excellent player, and I think on the whole, he is probably the most talented player on the last 3 years. The thing is that there were obvious points where you could criticize Zeus, which is that he was not stepping up in the big games, right? Zeus was, earlier in his career, I think, rightfully labeled as kind of a choker. Like, it is embarrassing that Kingen got World's MVP in that series in 2022.
Oh, for sure.
He has a long history of getting kind of bopped by Thorin in the playoffs, which is not somebody a player of his skill should be getting bopped by. He was, dare I say it, kind of a regular season merchant, but he stepped up a lot last year. And continued that play this year. And I don't think those claims can rightfully be leveled at him anymore.
Because I do hate that angle where people, because of the poor beat narrative, make it that, like, none of this even counts for any other player. It's just Faker. And these are just puppets that he's using, like his sand soul, just to win. Like, these are fucking Keria and Zeus are really good players, bro. Like I said earlier, here's another one for you. If you all think it's just Faker, guys, you can rebuild any team you want. So you know what? You remember Lehen's MVP of the LCK? Faker can have Lehen's. Let's take fucking Keen. Mate, everyone was telling me Keane was part of why Chovy was winning. Give Keane to Faker. And then here's what I want. Just give Zeus and Keria tonight. Now, he'll have them next year in the LPL. He'll go like JDG or TES or something. We'll just have them players. And let's just run it back. Because, by the way, that does bring up the biggest bomber of League of Legends esports, bro. You must be like me. Just like last year after the JDG series, after this finals, doesn't part of you just go, bro, I can't wait to watch these teams play again. Oh, wait, I never will. That sucks. Like, bro, if you told me, like, I know it's that shit fearless draft one, but if you told me, like, in 3 months these teams play again, I'd be super hyped. I'll never get to watch it again. I don't get to ever run this back. What? That does blow, bro. That blows.
It is really just a bummer that we didn't get JDG back this year. And, you know, we got Knight on another really good team, but, you know, now the rumors are that Knight is mad at BLG, that he's like unfollowed. He's like deleted all of his Weibo posts about BLG and is unfollowed BLG on Weibo. So maybe there's some drama there where he won't be coming back, right? But yeah, you want to see the rematches, right? That's why I'm hoping that Gen G stays together, or really I just hope they stay together and get Ruler. That's what I hope. The return of Ruler, fuck pays. But that roster would be really fun to see come back. And it's probably the best realistically that Gen G could do, because the thing about Gen G is how do you even evaluate your problems at this point in time? You went 17-1 in summer. You went 35-3. You had a 92% game win rate. How the fuck do you improve this, right? You just set a record, a regular season record. It's really hard to you're like, shit, we didn't win again.
Also, I'm just going to put this out there. If you are the guy who made the JDG roster and then the BLG roster, and this T1 didn't win first year. Even the example didn't win. Please. Why don't I get year 2 and year 3? What is this? This is so harsh. And then even worse, Monty, as if it's like, this is where like real life just ruins all real narratives. Then it's also like, oh yeah, and also we're just going to like change all the financial rules so you can never have that team again. Oh, why? Why? Is this Pureshik running Kesper? What's going on? Is he at Riot Global? Did you do this, Pureshik? Did Pureshik come and go? Economic responsibility in esports is a very important topic to me. It's like because he can't win worlds anymore. He's not going to let anyone else win. He's fucking everything's Pureshik's fault. I don't know how, but he's behind all this. I knew it. That bastard. Such a bummer because I say, bro. Imagine if in 2 weeks these teams were playing again. Oh, it'd be so straight fire. That's why I'll never be able to get over coming from games where you actually can play very regularly and just see these matches again. I don't want to have to wait 2 years to see 8 of these players play again. It's garbage.
So my real question.
Final, though.
Yeah. My real questions is, T1 has now said, hey, they want to run this roster back if the players are up for it. Our question was, okay, if they win Worlds, are there going to be other financial opportunities? Will that trump potentially the fact that this roster wants to stay together?
I go for you on this. Okay.
But I will say this. One of the aspects about the salary cap, right? The soft cap, that's coming in for the LCK, is that players that have won LCK titles 5 times or more, or have won an international tournament 3 times or more, will only have 50% of their salary reflected in the cap. And also, in a similar way, the players that stay with the same team for 3 years or longer will receive a 30% reduction in the cap.
All right, already applies then.
So the 30% reduction is going to apply for T1. So basically what this means is that only 70% of their salary would reflect in the cap, which means that T1 actually can pay them more money. We know that LPL caps are also going down, and that maybe LPL teams will not be spending as much. But my real question is this, Thorin. Does EWC count as an international tournament? Because if so,
in theory it shouldn't, right? Because Riot doesn't acknowledge
it shouldn't. But that's a question that has to be answered. I don't think it does, but it has to be answered, because if it in fact does, then this T1 roster would have won the 3 international tournaments, right? The other question that I have is, does Asian games count as an international tournament? Because some of these players on T1 have won they won the gold medal at the Asian Games to get their military exemption, right? That would be what? Zeus, Faker, and Keria. So it would not be Owner and Guma. If that's true, then does that, with the 2 Worlds titles that they've now won, mean that only 50% of their salary is reflected against the cap? We need to know the answer to these questions. Because I think it'll make a big difference as to what T1 can do in the future. So yeah, there've been some rumors that Gen G is having a hard time holding on to Chovy. I don't really believe that. I'd be really surprised if Chovy's signed anywhere else. I don't think he's going to get a better deal.
By the way, I also think it would be a mistake. Like, here's the difference. I know in the LPL, the stars just move around all the time because they have like really weird GM approach. In Korea, I actually think the approach you should take is what Faker has done, is what now Chovy should do. You just stay on one of the biggest orgs and you let them reshuffle the lineups around you. Like, what you trust is that if you stay in your Chovy, they will go and get you ruler, or they'll go and get you some other cracked out player, and then you just get to re-up and try again with a different squad next year. I think that's totally fine. Spoiler, get Lehens the fuck out of there. But like, the real sad thing, I said it the whole time, I wish Delight could have stayed. Delight was so much better.
Lehens is so clutch at times, though. Like, remember his Blitzcrank games at MSI, man? That stuff's great. He just wins you games a lot of the time.
Yeah, but the problem is, he's the Winter Soldier, and then he sees Faker. Yeah, yes, Admiral Faker. I can't help. I'm itching. I cannot be more. I can't take the itching fucking Lehens. I can't do it again. I can't do it.
But that's everybody versus Faker. So, also Tarzan, also Kanavi. Honestly, Faker's just a Dark Archon, and he's just using mind control on people. That's what it is. It's more Faker than the particular players on any given roster. But I do think they need Lehens, because Delight is nowhere near as vocal as Lehens is as a player, and I think he's pretty core to Gen G's macro, which was the best of the world for much of this year.
The thing is, though, the way Game 5 ended, though, Monty, why did it have to be like you thought finally, like the fucking, the Padawan is about to overcome the Master and then just when they reach for it, Monty, it's just outside their reach. All they have to do is just reach out and it's like that fucking scene in the throne room in Return of the Jedi, like, you want it, don't you, your weapon? Just reach and take it from me. And then as they go to get it, fucking Faker's just like Pai Mei or something out of fucking like Kill Bill. So I'm like, oh, you want this, do you? What? It's just I hate it so much. I hate it. Because the worst thing is, Monty, in that moment when they did the like fucking engage on that mid lane fight, the problem is if you do watch the LPL, they do win those sorts of fights. That's actually the sort of fight LPL's really good at, sort of like clean up a scrappy fight. But then once like they start to turn it, it's so depressing, isn't it? And then when you see that cancelled TP, it's like, God. Because that was also, remember, that was like 5 minutes after the other fight broke. It was like insane how quickly after it was on it. Like, it all just went down the drain in an instant. But it was exciting, like I said. It actually was an amazing match to watch. I have to say, it was fucking sick, bro.
And I am bummed out because you want to see BLG run it back, just like we wanted to see JDG run it back last year, because BLG was also incredibly dominant domestically. And we want these dominant teams to stay. Like, I want to see T1 run it back. I want to see Gen G run it back. I want to see BLG run it back. These would be very, very exciting matchups to see again, especially if we're going to have more international competition potentially next year, right? I mean, barely more, it depends on whether they let some of the independent tournaments into the circuit or not.
They've got that wacky fearless draft coming. That's a real thing, bro. I can't handle it. Get me out. By the way, another cursed monkey paw moment, guys. Congrats, everyone. Congrats on us all infinitely using a same cursed monkey paw, which at this point we should really learn our lesson. So you ready, Monty? I just wish there was another international tournament. No, wait, obviously real normal rules. Too late. The monkey paw curls. Like you should have been specific, Thorin, that you wanted it to be the normal rules of the game, like every other tournament ever. My bad, cursed monkey paw. You win yet again. Oh, this time I hope Knight's just like in a winning position. Then he goes for a Faker-esque play to win worlds. Okay, Thorin, it's what you wanted. Here you go. He is re-engaging the fight. No, Knight, what are you doing? What are you doing? That's Order and Faker. Knight, no. You know the worst thing, Monty? This is what I hate. I don't know if you ever get this experience, but when I watch a match, it's actually why I'm like you. I don't care about spoilers. Just like in a film, if it actually works, if the drama and the tension is real, I can re-engage anyway. These are the games, because I've rewatched games like this a million times. When I rewatch classic, really good sports games like this, my brain actually does think it can be a different result. You know what I mean? Like if I rewatch this game now, I'll actually think they can win it somehow, bro. I'll be like, no, they can do it. Look, Bin can get to him. And then it'll never happen. I'll just be tortured, rewatching it over and over again into eternity. That would be my fucking Sisyphean nightmare to rewatch that game. I mean, by the way, I've even done it on the JDG series, bro. I've really watched it, and part of me wants to just go like, "What he's going to do with the J shuffle? Watch out, you fools! Fly, you fools, fly!" I've got nothing. Fellowship of the Ring. I can't handle it. It's so bad. Do you get that if you rewatch it? Do you actually get engaged?
Of course.
I start to believe.
Of course.
I start to like buy the storyline again. It's true.
Of course.
That's what
because I mean, if you remember the context of it, you're just like, this team shouldn't win at this point in time. I mean, surely if you go back and watch DRX's run in 2022, every step of the way you're saying, this is where it was fun. This is where DRX taps out, right? Literally every stage of the bracket. Yeah, too funny.
And also that does low-key make it seem like Pioshik actually is on some like Kyle Reese shit where he was sent back in time to stop T1 becoming the greatest dynasty to ever exist in league. He had to nick the only one it was possible to nick, which is he had to sneak through that first year and just delay the inevitable juggernaut from taking over league. So it's too late now. Now obviously Faker's completed league. It's too late. We can't do anything now. Too late.
It is going to be impossible basically to catch Faker's legacy in the realistic lifetime of League of Legends at this point, especially because the scary thing is Faker can still win more, apparently.
Yeah. That's the other thing people aren't talking about, money. Look, I get everyone's going to go, you're a hater this year, because I said last year they should change roster. By the way, I still maintain that, Monty. If you'd have changed roster, you might have won Worlds and the other tournaments. What are you talking about? Maybe you could have had the players on Genji or on life, like, maybe why not? So there's the other thing people aren't thinking about. Mate, I appreciate this roster because they just won Worlds. So, like I just said earlier, I'd want to see them play again. I want to see if that's the last game they ever play, if they could be awesome, if they'll be not as good in the LCK. But part of me does also think, if you're T1, you have to also consider upgrades yourself. Like, what if you could get Ruler Pro? Shouldn't you go for that? You know what I mean? I think you should make some big moves out of your T1, in my opinion. You got to go for the gamble.
Yeah, I would say Guma's champion pool was actually a hurdle to them winning this final. It could have been a lot easier. It could have been with Ezreal and Kai'Sa. Probably could have been easier than in some of these games throughout the bracket stage. So, I mean, people won't like that because they love Guma, but I don't think that Guma is approaching. He's a very good player, but I don't think he is truly amongst the elite in his role.
That reminds me. Shout out to Mrs. Lee, the mother of Guma Yushi, who produced Innovation, one of the greatest StarCraft 2 champions ever, and now a 2-time Worlds winner. Her womb alone was the esports fucking, I would say actual tank, that's probably too far, but it's fucking insane. It's like generated greatness out of esports. She's fucking cracked it. She's like the Kelsey mom or whatever of esports, and there you go.
That's right. Shout out to Guma's mom and Innovation's mom. Yeah. How many titles do they have between them at this point in time?
Also, bro, I'll never get over it, because I actually spent time in real life around Innovation. I'll never get over how completely different the personality of Guma Yushi is.
Innovation is literally the most boring person person I have ever
he even
encountered.
Looks like a nerd, bro. He looks like Thorin, if people don't know. He looks like a mega nerd, right? And if Gumayushi actually has an actual Giga Chad fucking chin profile, and he's just got like mad swagger, hasn't he? Like, there's another line out of that intro that's even better now, Monty, is when Gumayushi just goes, T1 does not lose to the opium. That's straight fire too. That's also a fucking great line now. That's immortalized, you know?
All right, we do have one sponsor for this episode, guys, and it is Manscaped. They're back, and they've got something for you. They have a Beard and Balls bundle now, where you get the Lawnmower 5.0 for your body hair and hair below the waist, and the Beard Hedger, a trimmer for your face. That's right. And you can get the I've used the, I don't have a beard, but I have, hair other places, which has been very well removed by the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Always nice to get a trim down there. Your partners will appreciate it. Let me tell you that. It's nice to be a little bit cleaner. Nice to maybe not have quite as much body hair as you might normally have. And they have nice skin-safe blade heads. I've never nicked myself with any of this. And the Beard Hedger, it's a product where you can get you can set several guides to it, so you can get a stubble, like a 5 o'clock shadow if you're into that, or you can set various lengths on the actual trimmer. So different tools for a different application, guys. And you can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code LFN at manscaped.com. It's 20% off plus free shipping with the code LFN at manscaped.com. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results. Just efficient, effective grooming whenever you need it. Also, keep it in mind for your male relatives at Christmas, perhaps. These bundles are good deals, and it's an opportunity for you guys to dive in there. They also have tons of different options, including, shampoos and everything like that. So other male grooming tools that are very nice. I'll tell you
one of my favorites.
The nose hair trimmer is one of my favorites as well.
That was literally what I was going to say. The weed whacker, the one which for the nose and ear hair. Because actually, look, it's more of an older person thing, but the nose hair especially. That this one. If you ever get like one long nose hair, it'll drive you crazy, mate. You'll feel like something's in your nose all the time. This is actually also, that tech is mega. It's never ever cut my nose or dragged in any way. And I was really scared about that when I first did it. So I actually find that weed whacker is straight fire. And also, as usual, shout out to anyone who uses any of these products. We only advertise ones we believe in.
Yep, that's right. And they're all waterproof too, which is super nice because it's much easier to take this stuff into the shower to use it, where it makes the cleanup significantly easier. So that's been another aspect of Manscaped's products that I've really enjoyed. So thank you very much. I've had a great time using them, and my wife has been appreciative as well. So you could look forward to that, as well as potentially giving it a gift.
By the way, interesting detail there, Monty. That is a real thing if people don't know. For some reason, Korean women, I found in general, just prefer people. I mean, you can see it with their pop stars. There's some neoteny going on. They like people to look very youthful and very almost like boyish. Because I have to say, when I was in Korea, all the girlfriends I had that were Korean always wanted me to be shaved down. Whereas the joke is in Europe, I feel like it's the opposite. People like you to have the beard and look manly, So it's an interesting difference in culture for sure.
Well, Manscaped can offer either option for you, trimming the beard or getting rid of it entirely. So yeah, thanks to Manscaped. Do support us, guys. Our sponsors are great, and helping them helps us. And now with the holidays coming up, you can help us even more, as well as helping yourself by getting some cheaper and very nice gifts for those people around you. So yeah, I do want to go back to the Flash conversation though, because we never really got into that. So you mentioned kind of offhand that you still think that Flash kind of takes the crown despite Faker's most recent win. So what's the context of that? Because Flash came along, I would say, relatively late into the history of Brood War.
Sure. Yeah.
And yet is still considered among the if not the very greatest esports player of all time. And you mentioned some caveats, obviously, such as the size of StarCraft. It was mostly played in Korea, right? Not truly an international game, didn't have the overall player base, but his level of dominance was really quite remarkable. And I think probably most people don't understand that about him as a player.
I mean, first of all, obviously it was only in Korea, like you say, but in the context of Korean esports, it was like Faker winning all these worlds. Like everyone was trying their hardest. Like that was the era in Korea. If you ever watched the really great documentary about it's called State of Play, you can buy it online. Like you'll see, this is when the esports machine in Korea was actually at zenith. This is when it was all on TV over there. There were massive. The players themselves, if people don't know, already back then were making like 6-figure salaries. There was people like the champions were making like $200,000, $300,000. They already had the thing back then where everyone used to practice like minimum 12 hours a day. And then if you're like the great player, you do like 4 hours on top and just don't get enough sleep each night. And then, so you basically, the circumstances of practice are the hardest possible. Then the game itself, I think that is just far and away the best RTS game ever. Like, obviously I'm an FPS guy, so I'll always have a bias towards FPS games for the greatest games because they have an extra element of aiming, etc. But in the context of Micro's not quite the same as raw aim, but it still takes talent. It's still an incredibly hard game to play. If people have never seen like Bisu or Flash do like a bunch of Micro on a bunch of units, it's unbelievable how skilled these guys are. And like I say, the depth of the game is impossibly long. I mean, if you think about it, when Flash came along, he basically came along like at the sort of like 60% of the way through Brood War, and he was actually for real the most dominant player ever. Like if people don't know, he did things. And remember, it's a 1v1 game as well. So Faker, the difference is Faker can have times where someone carries him to a win, or in the case of the last few years, he's even the best player on the team. He's just a captain. Flash, it's just him doing it all. It's only him playing. And if people don't know, back in the day, a famous thing about StarCraft, because there's 3 races, is every race has a race that's slightly weaker. So famously, like Terran will beat Zerg, and then Zerg beats Protoss, and then Protoss beats Terran. It's the rough way it goes, right? So as a result, most players, the way their career goes like this. Whatever race you're in, so if you're a Zerg player, right, the best Zergs nearly always dominate the Protoss player, like do fairly well against the Terran player, and then, you know, ZVG, the mirror matchup, it depends on the race, right? Flash at one point in time, when he was at his peak, had something mental, like 70+% win rate against all 3 races simultaneously. So basically, he didn't have a single weak matchup in the game. And then also, he broke all the ELO records, everything. And then at one point, he did things that were actually impossible. Like one year, there was, in the 2 individual leagues, they used to have 3 instances each year. He just made all 6 finals and won 4 of them. And one of them that he lost was a 3-2 as well, by the way. And then also, like, he was, I think, like the youngest player to win an OSL or something. Then years later, he had his dominant period. People even forget this. Actually, after his dominant period, this is a story people forget. In 2011, he had actually a hand injury. He actually had to stop playing for a period of time, like a few months. He came back. The second he came back, he did some like insane win streak in like Pro League of like, I'm going to say like 30 games or something meant like that. And then won like 1 more individual title on the way out the door in StarCraft. So like, again, if you want to talk, you're talking about like a solid 4 or 5 years where this guy was unreal. And he had a couple of years where he might have peaked like the highest ever in esports. So I mean, to me, it's mainly about the skill level of the game and how many people were trying to play it. So like the difference is when I say earlier, people can look at like Daigo in Street Fighter or Rafa and quit. The difference there, Monty, is you compete against like the same 100 people for 10 years. This is like you were absolutely competing against like hundreds of thousands of people who were practicing 16 hours a day. And this guy was just it. Like, I don't know that much about chess, but from the little I know, he was like some Bobby Fischer or Magnus Carlsen figure where they're just the best and they're like ahead of everyone, if you know what I mean. So I think you always have to bear in mind how hard that game was. You always have to shade him in and give him his due respect, in my opinion. But yeah, Faker's definitely up there. Yeah.
You know, with Flash as well, he's still actually an active player also. Sure. It's just that the prestige and scope of Star Wars Brood War tournaments is nowhere near, obviously, what it used to be back in the day. And he's actually switched to random now, which is, he's played a bunch of games as random.
I personally don't out this era that much because this is the era where people are like amateurs and semi-pros. Sure. But people want to know, so it's not like Flash stopped playing, like I said, in 2011 or something. Like, if you don't know, guys, since then, when Brood War came back as like a real like grassroots thing in Korea, as Monty says, because he'd actually played a bunch of these tournaments where actually the old pros were coming back and playing, and a bunch of the younger pros too, he kept winning so many of them. To challenge himself, he changed to random, which isn't even a thing. If you don't know, by the way, like Gur played random because it was in 2000 when no one played the game and he could just use like, you know, essentially it was like a fearless draft. You just use the fact neither of us know what's going on to win the game. No one plays random because, again, I've just said it's hard to even be good in 2 out of the 3 matchups. This guy was not only playing random, they had to eventually like rig the map pool, Monty, so he couldn't just win while playing random. Like it's almost like for real, he like completed the game. It's like, well, I don't even use that whole like fucking like, Ready Player One level like but it is like for real, this guy completed StarCraft. He mastered it. It's unbelievable.
and as you say, if you guys have never actually played, if you played StarCraft 2 or another RTS, if you've never played StarCraft 1, the game basically, you literally can't, no developer in their right mind would make a game this difficult to play.
No.
Ever again. Because it's almost as though the UI and the game itself is fighting against your ability to play it a lot of the time. Because StarCraft 2, one of the big controversies that came in when the game was released was what was called multi-building selection, or MBS. And people were saying you shouldn't be able to...
Not one Faker, just calm down, mate. It's about something else in esports, not MBS. Right.
MBS, he figured out really excited when he heard MBS. He thought he was about to get a good meal. But when you talk about multi-building selection, it was that the StarCraft community was really actually, the hardcore players were quite angry that you were going to be able to do things like select 5 barracks and queue up Marines in all of them at the same time. Because literally in StarCraft Brood War, you have to individually click on every single building in order to make a unit. So that means that if you have 5 barracks, you have to click, hit M for Marine, click on the next one, hit M for Marine, click on the next one, hit M for Marine. And what this meant was that it sounds very annoying, and it was if you were playing it. But what this did to the professional scene was it created this amazing wealth of styles in StarCraft Brood War, because basically you physically can't move fast enough to do everything perfectly. Every player was making decisions like, do I have better macro, but maybe worse micro? Because I'm in my base, like, trying to min-max my resources, or am I the player who uses more of my actions and my attention on these small groups of units to perfectly split my Marines around lurkers, or to be doing dropship harassments in their worker lines, right? But that comes at a price, and frequently that's, you can't spend your money fast enough because you have to go back to your base. You literally have to physically fucking like look at your base in order to make units, because you can't hotkey all your buildings together. You have like a hotkey, you bounce back to your base, and you just start frantically clicking on all your buildings. It's stupid, but what it did do was it made insane styles in StarCraft Brood War, which we didn't see in StarCraft 2, and I would say that was probably one of the most disappointing aspects of StarCraft 2 at the professional level. But obviously they're not going to do that, because in a modern game, trying to convince someone that it's fun to click on every single individual building is dumb, right? And you try and make skill expression in different ways, of which I think we can say StarCraft 2 is in a much better state these days. The bummer is StarCraft 2 might be in its best balanced state and excitement state ever in the last few years, but unfortunately it's at a time where far fewer people watched it. But there were some fucking like nightmare eras of StarCraft 2, especially in like Heart of the Swarm. It was terrible. Like, it was terrible to watch. So I think when you look at Brood War, you have to understand that this game is just absurdly hard to play. And then when you factor in Flash's ability to micro and macro at the level that he does, it does seem virtually impossible to play a game at the level of this guy. And playing this game is way harder than playing League of Legends. Way harder.
I mean, here's the analogy. Funnily enough, this is actually a concept that Aptor Dorper mentioned about Faker a few years back. It was quite a revolutionary concept. He was the one who actually explained the idea that one of the things Faker does when he lanes, Monty, is he essentially fucks with the bandwidth of the opposing mid laner, and he does things like get the support of the jungle to like fake that they're going to gank, so it takes that guy's attention so that he like doesn't farm a certain minion and he can push the wave, all shit like that. And anyway, the point I'm making here is, if you understand that concept, the idea you have a limited amount of like ability to think about things and make actions. StarCraft essentially, like you're saying, just maxes that out the whole time. So if you're actually the GOAT players like Flash and J-Dong and Beast, like their ability to like multitask, which always remember people, is not real. Humans can't actually multitask. Multitasking with humans is just taking your single point of awareness and for a moment putting it like Faker, but doing the function. You're just looking there for a second, then you're putting it elsewhere. Essentially, multitasking is just shifting, like, it's not like a panopticon where you can see everything. You're just shifting a spotlight or like the Eye of Sauron onto something, right? If you can then do that and then look super in control, and as Monty says, simultaneously micro in the fight and harass and keep your workers in production, it is like that. I think for real, it is the hardest esports game ever. Like, I might think there's more skill in like Counter-Strike or Quake, but like the difference is, I think everything combined, I think it's the hardest esport game ever, bro.
Yeah,
it's
and
so
you know, a lot of it was because it wasn't really designed. It was never designed to be an esport. It was designed to be a single player experience with some multiplayer like Battle.net and everything like that. But nobody knew that you could actually like stretch the game to this limits. And it was also, I mean, the game is from 1998. It was technical limitations, I'm sure, you know, but having, I didn't even mention you can only control 12 units in one control group, which
just do a giant control
when you're
group,
playing with Zerglings or Marines is very annoying. So it's, you know, even moving large armies around the map was just physically very difficult. And are these like good mechanics? No, but they were very skill expressive mechanics. But yeah, not at that. This is why people had to play it for 12 hours a day. I'm sure it was really not fun to do that, but it did make for actually like just very spectacular esports matches. And that's why people look so fondly back on Brood War, because it really like was one of, if not the greatest esports of all time as a result.
The problem is, even though people aren't going to like this, because actually, just like in esports, most people like team games, Monty. That's the reason I'll always give Flash that extra status, because I do think 1v1 sports are just harder. Like, if you think about being someone like a Djokovic or something, where you have to just mentally be the strongest that's impossible, bro. Like, when people do that, it's not just their level of play. I have, like, admiration for just their mindset, bro. I think it's impossible to be that good. Whereas the difference is, you can, in a team game, get... Like, spoiler, here's the obvious thing to say about this final in League of Legends, Monty. Faker was dope in Game 4 and Game 5, but if it was up to him, that series might have been over. Like, if he hadn't have had people like actually play well on his team, he might have never got in position to win those extra games. He could have just been 3-0'd. Like, in a 1v1 game, it's just you every game, boys. You have to do it. It always has to be you. You can never trip and have someone pick you up. There is nobody to pick you up. It's just you. So that's why when you're someone like Flash, and like I say, you make like 6 finals in a row, like that just beggars belief. If people don't know, here's a stat for you. I think in history, here's another thing Flash did, because he made all of the finals in a year, Monty. He made both finals simultaneously, the MSL and OSL. I think in history, something like 3 people had done that once. He did it 3 times in a row in the same year. And that's why here's the best actual final note on Flash that explains how good this guy was. Are you ready? Which was when he was first winning and he was insanely dominant, people had this argument, Monty, is he the bonjour? Is he the player that the term in Korea meant is above all the others and, you know, no one compares? And the problem he had, Monty, was everyone used to actually say no, even when he'd already won 3, 4, 5 titles, because the problem he had was the guy who was right there was Jaedong, and Jaedong had won 4 or 5 titles too, and Jaedong, and there was Bisu and stuff. So people used to say he's not the bonjour because there's a rival, right? So essentially it ruined the paradigm. This is the joke, Monty. When he finally ticked over and had won everything and had won 6 titles and all this dominant, people then just said, we'll skip the bonjour conversation. We're just going to call him, and his nickname was God. We're going to skip calling him.
Or the perfect weapon.
The ultimate weapon. That was 2 years earlier. But essentially, he resolved an argument by having everyone agree. Actually, he just needs his own new category. He's S+++++, like when Ellis makes a tear or something. That's insane. That's insane. By the way, I just realized we've done like 20 minutes just glazing Flash here. But whatever. If you don't like StarCraft, probably sucked for the last 20 minutes, didn't you? I was getting into it. I was getting back into it, boys.
Well, I think people will appreciate this who don't necessarily understand esports history, because I mean, this is the rarefied air into which Faker has now climbed, and these are very real, I think, conversations that we begin to have about some of the greatest players in esports history and their extraordinary accomplishments. So I do think it provides context for League of Legends, because if you've only followed League of Legends, or you've only followed esports since, I don't know, 2000
years or whatever,
12 just 12 years ago now, you may not have any context on Flash. So I think it is important to discuss him.
By the way, I will always say that detail as well. In the same way as I always say people might think unfairly about League, like it's just not as skilled a game as Counter-Strike or Quake or StarCraft, etc. It's just not. But at the same time, put it this way, you don't think my mates like Rafa enjoy me saying this. I also don't put Rafa as the greatest of all time, because here's the problem, Rafa. You didn't have like 200,000 Chinese people every day of their life practicing to beat you. You had like, really good players, veterans and all great players. But that's the difference. I actually do think that aspect of Faker's accomplishment is very, very impressive. Bro, you know this, Monty. Just in Korea alone, think about how many people have tried to be Faker or better than Faker. Everyone for 10 years now. And in fact, we're even talking about even the people who already in theory have supplanted Faker as better than him, like Chovy, they still haven't been able to win. I mean, they've won domestically, obviously, but like, that's the thing. I think all these people, spoiler, like you say, at this category, everyone's incredible. We're talking about like the 4 or 5 best people to ever play esports, basically. Well, there's a detail I forgot to mention, Monty. Just for the lols, how insane do you find it, sir, that someone who just won the World Championship in League was already in the Hall of Fame, or whatever that shit is called? What's it called? Hall of Legends. What's that thing? That's so stupid, Monty. It's so stupid, boy. He's still in. He's still playing, you fucks. He's still winning.
And the funny thing is his Hall of Legends skin now needs to be updated with a 5th cup, but they fired the artist who made the skin. So it's just pure riot moments here, by the way. Pure riot moments. The other thing that I'll mention about Flash is that people will have missed this. If you were not around in the early days of League of Legends, a lot of the StarCraft fans, there used to be Flash memes about League of Legends. What was it?
True.
Where
yes.
So they used to post this picture of Flash, and people would say
it's
things.
It's the one where he's looking like all like nonchalant, like a boss, like. And there's one way. I know the ones you're on about, Monty. It's where they'll just say stuff like, "League of Legends, it's a good game, I guess, but why was I only microing 4 other players?" Like, and the joke is like, obviously, exactly. It's like StarCraft, and it's like, it's a team game or something, some shit like that.
It's
that, wouldn't it?
It's the unimpressed Flash meme, and the meme that was going around is he's just like sitting there, it's like. And it says, League of Legends is pretty tough. The guy controlling the other 5 units almost won.
There you go. Yeah. So if you don't know, by the way, guys, the unit supply size in StarCraft is like 200 for the army, by the way. So as Monty says, you can only control groups of like 12, and you're controlling the whole giant army of hundreds. It's actually epic. It's fucking really epic, yeah. By the way, there are loads of really good ones like that, Monty. Like, if you don't know, Flash's name in Korean is Lee Young-ho, so there were ones like, I am Lee, bring the Young-hos. Like, it was all the classics. You imagine all the good shit, all the best memes, all the best ones.
So yeah, anyway, I did want to do a detour through that. I want to talk about some other aspects. By the way,
that's something we should do. You should write down and make a note of this, just like we did that thing where we had the freeze pipe and we did those funny clips. We should do one where we gather and do like an oral history of like famous esports memes, and we'll take all the classic ones. Yeah, that would be fire, wouldn't it?
So that Flash meme was really big in the early days of League of Legends, because all the StarCraft fans,
everyone was posting it, obviously. Yes.
Yeah, on Team Liquid, because they were all trying to shit on League.
Generators one. Yeah, it was one of the first meme generator ones. Yeah, true.
I do want to talk about some of the other aspects of the World Finals, though, including the intro and like the opening ceremony, which I thought was so. My fear, Thorin, was that this was just going to be a giant Arcane ad that they would cut. A bunch of the introduction for players. Actually, I don't know if it was a technical problem or whatever, but they actually did extend the analysis desk by 10 minutes. I think they were supposed to start 10 minutes earlier, like the opening ceremony, and maybe they were just a little bit delayed. So we got more analyst desk, which was good, because I think they said while they were on the desk, they got to dive into a bunch of different aspects about the teams and the players that they wouldn't have otherwise. And especially shout out to Emily Rand, by the way, who I think did an excellent job of telling the stories of the LPL players.
I think that segment where she does like draw your life is one of the best segments they ever introduced in the league. When it's actually great. It's really good for desk as well. So easily, intuitively picked up what she's
and that was
about,
on the T1 players, but I think she also did a really good job of describing like the formation of BLG and the origin stories of the BLG players. I thought she just did a really good job of like setting up the stakes.
Because she has like an insane encyclopedic knowledge of League, she'll always, throw in like a random little piece of trivia you didn't know into one of those. Or there'll be something about like, and he comes from this hometown in Korea, and this is what what? I've never heard that. She always has like some little details she sprinkles in as well. It's actually masterfully done, I think. Yeah.
And so when we get to the opening ceremony, I got really afraid, because I started to see the drawings of the Jinx graffiti, and I'm like, shit, man, here comes the Arcane ad. But they did, some like, it's not really my jam, but I think for what it was, they were very successful with the way they did the choreography. It felt really snappy in terms of moving from the Jinx segment to the Kindred segment. And then I appreciated Thor, and this was kind of a callback to 2014 when they had Imagine Dragons in Korea, which is that the focus really wasn't about Linkin Park when they came out. They started doing the song. I thought the new Linkin Park singer looked mad awkward and out of it on stage, but whatever their performance is, I don't really care. What I really like, though, is that they incorporated the player walkouts into the middle of the song. So it became the focus was transferred onto the actual players, which I think was much better star building. And then you had kind of the conclusion of the song and the players, on stage and ready to go. So I actually really liked the opening ceremony this time. It was really, I think, tight. It wasn't too long. It was appropriately focused on the players. There wasn't a stupid Arcane ad in the middle of it, because Riot has been insanely guilty, especially when the first season of Arcane came out, of just jamming it full of Arcane ads or like bullshit KDA skins with, dancing augmented reality, uncanny valley Aries. I thought this one was just much better done. Much better done.
I wasn't really feeling Linkin Park either, but whatever. It's just a whatever. Luckily, the actual video intro, I think, said it was straight fast. I didn't mind that one. I don't give a fuck. By the way, Monty, spoiler, I never even appreciate, because by the way, when we used to have in the end of 1.6 in the 2000s, when we had events in Asia, every Asian event does this, where they would have like a bunch of people dressed as CTs, like rolling around, like, oh, flashbang, like, who cares? Bro, I don't care about the law of any fucking game. I don't care.
I don't
The only
either.
law in League of Legends I care about is French hosts the LEC. There you go. Not bad. Not bad.
There you go. But I just think what I have hated about previous Worlds openings is it has felt like it wasn't about Worlds, and it wasn't about the players, and it wasn't about celebrating the history of the game. And I did not feel that way about this one. It felt like they wanted to use Linkin Park. I don't give a shit about new Linkin Park guys. I never even was a Linkin Park fan in the first place. So I extra don't give a shit about them and their new singer. But I know a lot of people like them. So for what it was, I was just happy that this didn't turn into an Arcane or Linkin Park ad, and that the focus remained on the players. The teaser, as you stated earlier, was really good. I enjoyed all of these aspects to it. What did you think about the closing?
What do you mean?
Did you see the trophy ceremony and the interviews and we got a classic Riot employee super awkward moment? Did you watch?
I didn't see the Riot thing. What was this you referring to? I'll have a look now. What are you referring to on that? I saw the trophy lift, but I didn't see the Riot thing.
So you must have turned it off. So they brought out Chris Greeley, who is he's now the head of League of Legends globally after Naz took a sabbatical and then peaced out during Esports Winter. He was, if you guys don't know, Chris Greeley used to be the commissioner of the LCS when the LCS was tanking their viewership and making such excellent decisions as the Alienware Dome. Just absolutely god-awful product manager for the LCS.
Literally just instantly on the timeline got instantly to him, because he's like a bald white guy, and he literally looks like he's reading like one of those terrorist like hostage videos, like, and the way that you have played so respectfully, like,
yeah,
you okay, what's going on here? Like, wink twice if you're in trouble. So what the fuck's going on here?
The weirdest thing, Thorin, is he doesn't smile during any of this. He's just like this, and he doesn't blink. He looks like he's on fucking amphetamines. Which maybe he is. I don't know. He's either pissing himself nervous or he is drugged.
Bro, he never blinks. I'm telling you, his eyes.
It's crazy. Well, I don't know what he was doing during the finals, man. It's fucking weird. And the funniest thing, Thorin, is you literally could just have Shocks do this and it would come across a million times better. But instead you put Rail of Coke / Deer in the Headlights man on stage who has no presence, who just looks like this the entire time, who can't deliver a line, awkwardly giving this. And get this, Thorin. At the end, he's introducing all the other Riot executives, and he actually fumbles the pronunciation of the new CEO of Riot's name. And then when the CEO comes out, he's hot mic'd, and he just shakes the CEO's head and says, "I flubbed that." It's great.
Oh, I'm going to scroll through to this. I've got to see it. Oh, I did. He goes, I still flubbed it. It's like, you might side, mate. We can just say that. So it's all good. We can say that. Don't worry.
After all these years, haven't they learned just not to put these Riot people on the stage? Like, it just turns it started badly, guys, when Mark Merrill and Brandon Beck came out in their t-shirts looking like bums and were like fist bumping the pros, and it just has never gone well. It just has never gone well. They keep bringing on new people and they just find new ways to fuck it up and look like idiots every single time. It is actually remarkable. Just stop. No, guys, Riot, nobody but you cares if your executives are on that stage. Literally nobody. All of us would be happier if you just let the people who are paid to be charismatic and tell the stories do these things. Why are you necessary to give a trophy? You're not.
Because that's the worst thing about these people, Monty. They want to pretend like, well, Faker, you did quite well. They're basically doing, here's the analogy. They're doing to Faker on stage what Mark Merrill did to Dom on Twitter. Like, well, Faker, sure nice I made this free game for you to win 5 world championships in, isn't it now? As though like Faker's supposed to be like, oh my God, I'm meeting a Riot executive. Like, it's supposed to be the other way around. You're just some fucking nobody meeting Faker, you idiot. He is a god who walks among us. You are just a fucking guy from a shitty small startup company that ripped off Dota All-Stars about 10 plus years ago, you idiots, and then shut the forums down with Pendragon, whatever. There's a lot of law coming out here. It's all a law league.
I just like how Chris Greeley, he looks like an NPC from a mid-2000s game, and you just expect him to start walking into the wall as soon as it's over. It's just so
he does look like a sim. You are right. Like he's like looking at the cameras like, am I on this one? Your commitment to our game has inspired millions around the world. And the fact that you continue to, give me, bro, this is some bad, like, Hallmark card shit. This is garbage. This is nothing. This is nonsense, mate.
Although, it does explain a lot about the management of the LCS and League of Legends as an esports.
Is right after that, when the crowd cheered, I heard he actually gambled and he went, and now everyone just say your name, because it's all about you. Oh, it's all about you. Oh, shit. Oh, flipped it again. Oh, bloody hell. Oh, what have I done?
I mean, it doesn't, to be fair, this wasn't as bad as like Mark Merrill and Brandon Beck like lifting the trophy as they have in the past, which was probably the peak cringe.
That is mental. That is mental.
It's completely out of, but Mark Merrill that's just who he is, man. It's just who he is.
No, but imagine, like, think about like the Stanley Cup where you do that hoist. Imagine if like the commissioner was just doing that instead, like, yeah, bitch, yeah. Oh, won the shit, yeah. It's me. It's all about me. The NHL, yeah, it's me. So bad in it.
Except it's worse because I think at least people would know the NHL commissioner. Like nobody knows who the fuck Brandon Beck and Mark Merrill are.
Also, by the way, you are aware the weirdest thing about League of Legends now is League of Legends Worlds is essentially the Shocks show starring regular co-host Faker at this point in time. Like what even is Worlds at this point? You know what I mean? Like the fuck? Like, I even thought, I didn't actually do it because I don't know her like that, to be fair. I even thought, I don't know if you saw this, Monty, but on the day of the finals, because Shocks always suffers from like insomnia or whatever, she's often gets quite stressed during events. And she did one of those tweets where she tweeted basically saying she was sort of like freaking out a bit before the world finals. And I wanted to just say, like, you are aware, you know how I know you've got this? Because no one in the history of esports ever had this. Like, you have this. It's your tournament, for fuck's sake. Like, you are essentially the most iconic person ever associated with any esports tournament ever. Nobody could ever do a better job than you because it's you. It's your job. Like, how could it be wrong? You know, like, I wouldn't worry about it. I think you're going to nail it. I think you'll trip over and do a good job. You've done it a million times. Come on.
That's right. That's very true. Another moment I wanted to talk about with you, Thorin, is I don't know if you saw the pictures, but yet another fan after the Brazil incident managed to make it on stage with T1.
Oh, no. Bro, I actually did want to talk about this because I'm getting really sick of this, Monty. Right? People, you know what? Here's what I don't get, right? I'm going to give you a quick analogy. Do you know one of the things I did find really insane, and this isn't about politics, it's about the response of people, is, you know that thing, Monty, where we're supposed to believe a month or two ago, someone actually tried to assassinate Donald Trump on stage, right? Someone shot a bullet, which presumably was intended to kill him. It didn't kill him by a tiny margin, and everyone just acted like, well, it didn't kill him, so no biggie. And I'm like, whoa, what? You are aware that means logically, like, this could absolutely have gone a different way where someone's head would just explode, right? Similarly, Monty, are you ready? Based on what I've already seen in esports this year alone, Monty, someone could literally have killed Faker and Mouse Sports and G2 and Counter-Strike because there were 2 crowd invasions where people ran onto the stage and got to the players, bro. That's the worst part. It's not that the guy got to the stage and he was tackled. And if anything, by the way, in a real sport, this discussion would be about, were they too harsh with how they tackled him or were they beating him up or so? Bro, he literally got to them. If that guy had a knife or a bomb, they're dead right now.
And I don't it's think the second time this happened to Faker, dude.
We can't take this as a minor issue. Like, this is a big deal. This is a big deal, in my opinion.
Yeah. And this is the second time this has happened to Faker because it happened at MSI when they won in Brazil. And like, guys,
years ago. Yeah, you're right.
I have been saying this for years that this is a major security concern. I will tell you this. At League of Legends events, there have been incidents where a fan has made it into the caster's changing room when they were changing. That has happened in League of Legends, okay? Riot's security at these events and the security they contract through these venues needs to improve before there is some sort of actual fucking incident here. And also, I don't know if you saw the video of this with the fan on stage this time, but the security guards are actually just like tripping upstairs, unable to catch this guy.
It's terrible. I know, I saw that. It's clown shit in it. They're like, oh, sorry. It's actually, it actually looks like some actual mall cop just chasing after like Jim and Silent Bob or something. Like, oh, what the hell? Like, you're fucking kidding me. They're trying to kill Faker, you lunatic. Because like I said, the reason I gave the Trump analogy, Monty, is because what I can't handle is this. Everyone else is taking esports is exactly like I said about the Trump. They just go like, yeah, but it didn't happen though. It was just a harmless fan. You can't know that. That's the problem. We can't know that. That's why we have to be super strict with this security. By the way, have they never thought it through, Monty? What if some lunatic person, you pick the cause, you pick what war or what conflict you want someone to be on one side of. Imagine they decide. I've always said esports would be the ultimate place to do it, bro. If you live on Twitch kill Faker, like that's going to be a fucking enormous story around the world. Like you think some lunatic will ever get that in their brain? Like that's the problem with mentally ill people. That will become what they will think is this is how I'm going to get my message out there. Like, you don't even want that to be in our minds. Like, as I said, you want people to have security where the second they even get to the stage, they're tackled by like 3 guys or something, Like, this way, the reason why it tilts me, Monty, is I'll give you an obvious comparison point. This took place in the O2, right? Monty, I went to the O2 like this year and saw like Tool play there and do like a live gig. You think if I ran on stage, I would get to Maynard? Bro, are you kidding me? There'd be like 7 security guards and body slam me the fuck. And second I got on stage, like I think that's insane that we're this lax to this day in esports. Until something bad happens, they're never going to up it, I'm afraid, mate. I think they're always just going to be like this and think like, oh, just silly. Someone ran on stage. Like, that's terrifying, mate. I hate that.
It is a Riot problem, but it also is an industry problem. And I've been talking about this for like 10 years that I think security at these venues needs to be significantly better. I mean, when I was in London,
here's the obvious joke, though. We could actually avoid any danger for T1 players, though. We could have Joe Marsh, before they come out on stage, could oil them all up. That way, if you grab them, you'd be like, I scooted away. There you go, see?
There you go, nice.
Think of Joe Marsh.
The oiled up owner is a reality. It's a security concern now. That's how he's going to pitch it.
By the way, what's that suggestion? Can't we have a skin for Lee Sin that is a world skin of order, just all oiled up? There you go, man. There's the world skin in it. There you go. He didn't play Lee Sin, sadly, but it's all good.
But yeah, you look at these incidents, and I agree. It's just unfortunately a matter of time because you do just have to have a phalanx of security around. But even in 2015, when I was in London for Worlds, one of the things they did was they put us in a hotel, the casters, right across the street from the venue. So there was basically no escaping the fans. So I mean, it was very difficult to get across the street.
Remember the iconic moment where Faker again, Monty, was locked outside that building when what's his name, fucking Groscore, got all those fans to come up to like that floor, and then Faker, because no one recognised him, he just stood like a homeless guy, like in the cold, like. And someone was, is that Faker out there? Like, and he was just actually like outside the hotel, like waiting to come back in because they like had to empty the whole hotel. By the way, that's how long Faker's been around, Monty. He was around during like the entire career arc of Groscore. Like Groscore was like top of the world back then, 2015. In the meantime, he's like ruined his whole life 2 or 3 times, come back, like OnlyFans. Like, Faker's still just going in league, bro. He's just still chugging along. He just keeps going. Fair play.
Although in that moment, I did kind of miss the fact that Bin didn't win, because at least Bin would have just hit the guy.
Oh, mate.
Bit would have just decked the guy. Would have been an iconic. We got denied the bin just hooks a fan right in the face moment. But yeah, look, this is I just am. I have to keep bringing light to this whenever it happens because it just keeps happening, and it is going to result in tragedy at some point in time because it's only a matter of time till somebody sneaks a weapon into one of these things and tries to make a move on a professional player, especially because the viewership for this was enormous, right? It was almost 7 million, not including China. So the international events just keep going up and up and up.
Who could have known? This is a joke. Understand this is a joke, but I'm going to now do it as if it wasn't a joke. If he's such a good teammate, why didn't Reckless just dive in like, get down, big figure, get down? Why didn't he try to take the bullet for him? Because you know why, Monty? Reckless will always be a KDA player. He was standing at the back. He was going to kite backwards if the guy came towards him. He was never going to take any damage, whatever. Like, that's whatever. Who gives a shit on that one? Fuck Reckless.
So, yeah. So there were also a bunch of announcements, guys, about the LCS changes to the LTA, surely the best name and acronym that we could have come up with. We are going to be talking about that later this week, but we're going to be doing a Four Horsemen on it. So we are not going to be covering that here. So be on the lookout because that's going to be it's going to be an entirely separate show where we discuss the changes that are coming in and what it means for the broader ecosystem, because that'll probably take a couple of hours just on its own with all of the changes. 100 Thieves, of course, just pulling the old bait and switch with their fans. Oh, we're not really selling. Yeah. We're committing to LCS this year, but we actually sold our slot. But we didn't, but we sold our slot.
And also, what sort of message even is that, Monty? Like, oh, you don't want to be in LCS anymore. You can still play as a guest. It's like, what? What is that even an option? What are you talking about, you lunatic? What the hell is this?
Well, in brief, Thorin, what I think happened was, here's what I think happened. Riot didn't want to offer they probably tried to lowball 100 Thieves on the buyout offer because they wanted 100 Thieves to stay, and it looks really bad for them if they have 3 out of 8 teams leave, which is almost 50% of the league after this last year, where of course they were saying things like, oh, we have a year-over-year summer increased viewership and we're going to this cool new model. Just to have teams bail on their new model before it even hits is probably just like an extremely bad look for them. So I think
1 sec, I'll be back in 1 second.
Yeah. I think they were really just focusing on avoiding any kind of situation where they might have any bad look whatsoever when it comes to the optics and the PR surrounding everything. And so it was just easier for Riot to basically say, okay, 100 Thieves, well, we're going to give you some money and also probably some stipend this year, and you guys can be a provisional guest team, even if you don't own the franchise slot anymore. Maybe you get less of a stipend as a result, but here's the fat paycheck up front. But it is pretty disingenuous, I think, the way that 100 Thieves is actually framing these narratives around their continued participation in League of Legends.
And also, I don't think people have really realized, like, the LCS is done. Like, all those cool narratives, it doesn't exist anymore. It's nothing. It's all gone now. It's over. Peace.
And it's a risk, right, to destroy the brands. By the way, you told us, Riot, that it was so important that we have these regional leagues and that the LCS and CBLOL and these franchise leagues, they were the core of League of... it's gone. All that history is gone. It's gone. Also, what is Mark Z's job now? Is he just commissioner of half a league?
What they should do, obviously, now is have 2 commissioners, one Mark Z and then one just some Latin American / Hispanic guy, just saying it all in a different accent. There you go, just do that. Stuff like that.
I'm into it. I'm into Brazilian Mark Z.
Oh, by the way, that's also why low-key they should make Mark Z still be the commissioner. Because imagine it fuck his life when he has to go on Twitter and explain to like Brazilian fans that there's been like a rule that's gone against him or something, bro. Like, it's not even going to be worth ever opening replies, mate. I can tell you, just close that. Just turn off, like, you know, where that thing where it's like turn off replies to this conversation or whatever. Like, it's not worth it, mate. It'll be a nightmare.
All right. Well, is that a wrap on our discussion of the World Finals, considering we're saving the rest of the stuff for the Four Horsemen?
Yeah.
All right. We'll take a quick break, guys. And when we come back, we'll do some viewer questions.
It is now going to be the viewer questions segment of the show, which, as I will always reiterate, comes not from live viewers or people watching the YouTube VOD. It actually comes from people who subscribe to our Discord. So if you subscribe to the Last Free Nation Discord, you will have access to channels where you can indeed pick one of the questions to ask us. There's also a thing where you can put topics for Hot Take Point Made, but I will just say, I just realized I did just film the other one and I forgot to check that, but I'll check it next time. It's all good. You can also recommend hot takes in theory if I check it. So Monty will actually check this, unlike that.
Everyone always wants the GOATs list and the best teams lists, but could we have an off-season episode with the worst players, teams, or games? We could probably do that. I remember one with TDK Flares going 0-9-6 on Gragas against Renegades and not hitting 100 CS until after 30 minutes. I don't remember that game, but yes, I mean, probably famously the Renegades Dignitas game, worst game of all time. The Oscars Chinese match where both teams were trying to lose intentionally. There's some fun ones in there we could go back with as well. Both of you have lived
one where, as a tribute to Cloud Templar, that
the Cloud Templar tribute
all
game.
The junglers. That was hilarious too. It was an absolute shit game. It was hilarious how bad it was.
And they all got banned from competing in Korea forever.
Which is also hilarious because the overreaction to the game as well as the funniest part. You're banned for life. Get out! Like, that's like that thing, Monty, where they actually did, for real, if people don't know, they actually for real banned Apto for 1,000 years. What I love about that, Monty, is there's something so Korean that they're thinking, but what if in like 50 years life extension technology means this guy gets to live longer? Like, no, banned for 10,000 years.
That's how you can tell, by the way, that Riot is a cult like Scientology, where you sign your soul up for Sea Org for 1 billion years. It's like Riot must ban Apto for 1,000 years, because that's how long League of Legends is going to be around, guys. Obviously. And clearly Apto is just going to transfer his consciousness from body to body until he reaches the end of his 1,000-year ban.
I just love how specific the year was, though. Like, it's as though someone was like, well, why don't you make it 2,000, sir? Well, don't be ridiculous. You know, I mean, maybe he's learned his lesson after 1,000 years. What are you talking about, you lunatic? Just say he's banned for life for that point in time, you know. I love it.
Both of you have lived in countries outside of the one you were born in. Would you still make this life-changing decision if you weren't forced to by work? I mean, I have done that without being forced. I voluntarily moved to Ireland in college, guys. I didn't have to go there. I just did it. I think it's fun, you know, frankly. I'm also not really bothered by moving to new places because I don't really need a lot of close companionship, and I'm happy being alone until I find people that I genuinely like and want to hang out with. So it's never really bothered me being away from friends and family either, especially since I live in a digital age. So it's never been an issue getting in contact with those people.
I mean, the hilarious thing in my case is, even though I lived in Korea, I never did any esports work in Korea. Like, the stupidest thing is, I didn't have to move there for work. In fact, I famously told the story that actually the year I moved there was probably the stupidest year, because it was the year I did the most European fucking Counter-Strike events. So I did that long haul flight about 15 times or something mental, whereas I probably should have done it the other way around, like done a few years of that, then come to Korea when it was like winding down. So if people don't know, I actually chose to go to Korea specifically to live in Korea. It was he's got the cart before the horse on that one. I actually wanted to experience Korean culture. It was baller, yeah.
Also, you literally live abroad voluntarily now.
Oh.
So, I mean, I guess more similar.
Here's what I would say, though, in answer to the question, what I feel like the gist of what he's trying to get at is, I do think, though, you have to be a quite unique type of person like me and you, though, because I have the same thing, Monty. This might sound weird, but I don't ever get homesickness. Like, if I thought about people who I can't see, I might miss them. But I don't really do that thing where during the day I'll sort of be like, oh, what the hell, this is weird. Somehow I can just adapt in that sense. But I will say, I don't know that that's everyone. I get the feeling a lot of other people do, after a while, miss all the things from home and they want to go back to their old life and to feel like they're a fish out of water. I never got that feeling personally, so I was okay with it.
I think it also is just that it broadens your perspectives, introduces you to new ideas and cultures and languages. So I think it's just valuable for people to undergo that if they have the opportunity to, even if it's not for as long as either of us have done it.
By the way, I'm just going to throw this out there to be rude, but what is wrong with the brains of the fans where when we re-upload one of those foreplay videos, they go, what's going on? Like, I've seen this before. Do you actually imagine we're just re-uploading the same video over and over again? There's like 4 versions of that video. Are you actually so brain dead you can't understand that even if you saw the original one, since the original one can't be on YouTube anymore because of copyright, we've had to replace it. And so, yes, I understand you've already seen it, but you don't have to watch this one. But you know what? Anyone who isn't you and who didn't watch it before, they're going to need to watch the new videos. To me, there's no mystery. I don't know what is confusing you. Like, to me, look, I agree. We can argue about copyright law and the way it's applied. But aside from that, this seems like a fairly open and shut case. So I don't know what the problem people are having is. Just move on. You've seen it. In that case, don't worry about it. You can just watch the next one. It's all good. You saw it already. By the way, if you're a genius, you could post your old comment from that one because that video's gone now. We don't know what you commented the first time. Maybe it was great. Maybe you said something really interesting. I doubt it, but let's be real. Could have happened. Not impossible.
On the topic of off-season ideas, why not make an episode on the Dade Award? Sure, we can do that.
That's not a bad one. We could go back and actually look up our reasoning and all that shit, yeah.
When the episode is done, you cut the video down. You could bring on different guests as needed. We don't need guests. You can cut down the video and have a video for each applicable year and stick it in a playlist. Then for next year, it could just be updated with a new segment. Yeah, I mean, the history of the Dade War would be good. Off-season / sporadic content, a D&D one-shot / mini-series where the 3 horsemen and a 4 horseman guest traverse the lands of Esports, where they fight the villains that rule the land. First episode could be the horsemen traveling to the land of Ryat Lasut, pursuing the dreaded organization Solo Mid. Yeah, the spelling is funny. Led by the Dread Lich, Richie Anald. Thorin could be an oath of vengeance paladin sworn to destroy all manifestations of evil on Esports. Mani could be the knowledge cleric granted powers by the god OGN.
That's not bad. Okay.
Richard would be a bard. Other spinoffs or sequels could include a selection of exploring the fell castle of Rifresh to overthrow a rebel king, Nicole Naihom.
Yeah, we saw where that one's going. All good. Yeah. Not bad.
Diving into the lost talent mine of Yuval Jigniusis, which has been taken over by an avatar of the fallen god, Ventura Kiptal, Nihol LaPointe Jameson. Yeah.
It's about EG, evil geniuses. Yeah. Not bad. It's
pretty funny. Is it known for sure
the Witcher, but we're just going around doing esports shit.
That's funny. Okay. Although part of it is just the text that's funny, right?
Do you want to know something, Monty? This is going to blow your mind. Sadly, it's going to sound a lot more hype than it actually is. But do you want to know a random detail that Maui revealed on a recent episode of Snake and Banter? And I can't even believe he waited till now, or Hot Point. This is actually going to blow your mind.
Okay.
When Maui was at university, literally, Nicole LaPointe Jameson was one of his TAs.
Wait, what?
That's it. But he didn't have any other interaction aside from that. That's real, apparently, when he was at university. Didn't he go to like Berkeley or something? He went to,
he went to Columbia. He went to Columbia.
There you go. Yeah. But he said that she was like a TA, like Nicole Prim or whatever she's called now.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, like I say, it sounds better than it is. Like I was like, well, those stories. Like, oh, there was none. She was just a TA on the course. But that is weird, isn't it? That is weird, mate. That is weird.
Is it known for sure if the LCK has a real commissioner? Yes, it does. Like the LCK communication referred to as a commissioner, or is it possible? No, they do actually have a commissioner called commissioner. The commissioner likes to hide though, and never take responsibility for anything or appear in public. And as far as I've been told, just play golf all day. So there you go. He doesn't show up at matches.
Okay.
I'd first like to apologize to Faker for ever doubting him. That Game 5 was some unkillable Demon King shit. It was. Which Worlds run was most impressive? 2022 DRX, 2023 T1, or 2024 T1? Definitely
this one, surely.
It was this one. It goes in this order.
BLG.
This year, because they beat Gen G and BLG just straight up. This year, then DRX, because DRX's run was very legit as well. And then 2023 T1. That's the order I would rank them in. Yes. The finals were fraudulent last year. The finals were mega fraudulent.
Oh, it was garbage. Yeah, it was garbage.
And also, T1 didn't beat Gen G last year is another big problem. Another big problem. You guys have been imprisoned by Shaq in a Minecraft server as part of his vengeance scheme against Thorin. Monty caught in the crossfire as always because you guys are the same person. Yeah, true. The only way to get out of it is to go through the same torture Alex DeLarge went through in A Clockwork Orange. So we have our eyes pinned open watching the horrible films. However, Shaq has given you a choice of films. You can either watch 500 Days of Sodom or 500 Days of Summer.
I know where we're going here. Come on,
or Sallow, or the 120 Days of Sodom, which is the Marquis de Sade book.
Just a really disturbing, transgressive film if people don't know yet.
Which one do you choose? I've read the book by the Marquis de Sade. I've never seen the film.
I would unironically choose 500 Days of Summer because there's a difference. It is terrible and soul destroying, but I think actually like Sallow and stuff like that is actually like bad for your soul, mate. I think that's like degenerate in a way you just don't want to experience, in my opinion.
That's fair. After this tournament, is Keria the GOAT support? No.
You're making a good case for it.
I mean, I think Mako probably still clears him, especially with the Mako's entire career body of work. But Keria's getting up there, man. That's for sure. I don't think we can say Mata is that anymore, even though Mata probably had the highest peak and arguably, I mean, you could make the argument, I think, that even above Faker, Mata changed the way professional League of Legends was played the most out of any pro player.
Monty, have you ever noticed how there are literally rules that only apply to me and no one else in esports? So if I ever tell you how good Froggen was in season 2 to season 4, I'm a moron going on about old shit. But then if I ask who's the GOAT, they go, Faker, didn't you see season 3? Who's the eye? Didn't you see season... It's the same fucking era! What are you doing? Which is it? Am I a moron for comparing Froggen to Caps, or are you guys actually telling me Mata from the early 2010s is better than a 2020 player? Which is it? There's no rhyme or reason to this logic, guys. You're just switching it because it's me. Because I'm with you. I agree. Like the Mata one was years ago. He was very, very good, but the difference is like think about how hard the competition now is, mate. It's fucking insane.
Well, I mean, this is coming from 3 years ago when we said Mata was the greatest support of all time. But I mean, obviously,
Mako still competes now, mate. He's still
exactly.
At the top now. He was like the fucking first team support or whatever. Yeah.
So Mako's pretty good, guys. And Keria, I think, definitely is in the conversation and can reach that status. For me, I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but I still think it's Mako for me off the top of my head, but maybe I'd change my mind if a strong argument or I thought about it more. Do you agree with this hot take? Faker winning the Worlds is bad for League of Legends. Everyone's saying that Faker has reached main character status, but disregards the reality that when the main character dies, the story ends. This may have been the last chance for Faker to pass the narrative crown to the next generation of compelling League talents, like setting up Chovy versus Knight. But now he has reached such untouchable greatness, his mortality may be inextricably tied to the mortality of LoL esports itself. It's a great question, but part of this is Riot's fault for doing such a garbage job of setting up the narratives with Knight and Chovy. Like, I don't blame Faker for winning. But I do think that if Faker retires, which I don't think he's going to do anytime soon, he probably won't retire until after next year at the very earliest. I think they will have a transition issue at some point in time because they have done a very, 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 very bad job of setting up the transition.
Put it this way, the best thing that could have happened was that Chovy's Gen G beat Faker's T1 and the final was Knight against Chovy, and then either way you win. One of those two players gets to do, like he's saying, that they get sort of put over like at WrestleMania in this analogy.
Yeah,
and they get to be the new king of League.
the aura of Faker rubbing off on them for sure.
And it's even better if they beat Faker directly to do it as well. Because that's the other thing. Then the whole narrative can be, these are the two guys who might run league for the next 5 years. Is one of them going to become the next Faker? Then that's because I saw this was like, by the way, I'll probably do a reaction to this on my stream, but I saw Cadrell had a whole rant about this, and I actually disagreed with him completely. Because he was saying, like, well, what can the broadcast do? Like, they have to set Faker up with that. No, we want both, bro. At the moment, all they do is set Faker up. Here's why it sucks, right? You could even, Monty, make a straight fire piece of narrative content along the lines of what these fans are saying that I don't even agree with. Here's the angle you do, Monty. You do the angle of the only thing Chovy and Knight haven't been able to do is win worlds. So you do a content piece where you have loads of other top players explain that, yes, Chovy and Knight have individually surpassed Faker. They're better players on a random day of the year. But why haven't they been able to win the big one? You could do a whole thing like that even. That's a great setup, by the way. Then if they finally do it, you have the one. If they don't, the Faker narrative still works. But what people are missing is this. Because you can set all of these major stories up and should, like I said about seeding T1, even potentially being able to do it, it means that in a few years you can tie back to those narrative points. Whereas I agree, actually, Monty, because they've built it as lol, Faker is the GOAT and the final boss. When he retires, it is over. Like, it's too late at that point. Because remember, then, you know this, all they're going to say then, Monty, when Faker retires and then Chovy and Knight win, is, well, they only won because Faker retired. So it does, unfortunately, narratively, even though this is like the ultimate Faker narrative, it probably is, like, in the short term, good for League, but bad in the long term. Like, it would probably be way better. By the way, on paper, the best would have been BLG winning also because the whole, like, a Chinese mid laner won, an all Chinese team. LPL really won world. That would have also been a really cool narrative too.
Yeah. They don't do enough, right? And it has gotten lazy. Even though I thought the teasers have been better for this world. You can always do more. You can always do more. Yes. And you can always create more supplemental content to go around, more documentary content to go around. And Riot really hasn't done very many documentaries around worlds, which is super weird to me. You would think you could put those on.
It's the saddest thing. You can spitball in 5 minutes a million. I'll give you another piece of content right now, Monty. So here's one thing you do. You do a piece of content where it is Flash and Boxer and I Love Oof and J-Dong and then other players in League, Mad Life and Mata and all the great players in the esports history from Korea. The video is them all explaining like why they admire Faker, the fact that he's still able to do it, and how do you keep going, the pressures of being the man and everyone hunting for you. That would be fucking fire, mate. Who wouldn't want to see a piece of content like that? It'd be amazing.
Yeah, and also a lot of those players used to play for organizations that are currently in League of Legends who could just ask them. Like KT could just ask Flash.
For sure.
T1 could just ask Boxer. Like, it's not that fucking hard. You know who else you could get? Innovation. Innovation, literally. Guma's brother used to play for T1 also.
Gumayushi has now won 2 world championships, and we haven't had any segments about his brother being one of the best StarCraft players ever. What is League of Legends esports? Like, we're not even on level one. We're not even the score esports, mate. They'd at least have some shithead janitor intern guy who started watching League 2 weeks ago do that video. Like, we don't even get that from fucking Riot, bro. You're right, that is insane. He's won 2 worlds now, mate. You know my joke earlier? Shouldn't there just be a feature about his mum by now? Like, for reals. Like, she's actually produced 2 of the greatest esports players of all time. Like, what are we doing? Well, at least decoration-wise, you know.
This is a soccer question. Is this T1 roster the equivalent of Real Madrid's Zidane as a coach, where he won 3 consecutive Champions Leagues? The team that lives for the biggest stage.
I hate that take. He's doing that take because that team didn't often win the league, but they won the Champions League, the biggest tournament. The problem he has there is those teams really were sometimes the best team and like unbelievably stacked with the best players ever. Like, I think it's only that one angle that they didn't win the domestic league that makes them like Real Madrid. So no, I think that's a very awkwardly crowbarred question because your brain will only allow everything to be, hey, they literally are Real Madrid. No, like that's I don't agree. I don't think it's a great take personally. It's all good.
Now that the league season is over, would you guys plus Richard be open to do an NFL show every 2 or 3 weeks? Would also love it if you covered playoffs. Maybe.
The difference is, I actually think the NFL might be one of the only ones we can do because I do think the problem, that's why I rarely do the basketball, I just do it infrequently. It is really hard when you do a full-time job to also like cover a sport because it's like its own thing. At least the NFL, you only have to watch a few games. It would at least be possible maybe one day. I would say that's more content for when like Richard and Monty step back a bit more from esports or something. They want to do something else, you know?
Yep. Also, like, but it is helpful that also the NFL season is the off season.
Yeah, that helps.
that does help.
Yeah.
I'm not averse to doing that. I think it would be interesting because we would probably, I think that show would probably mostly be about attacking or fortifying narratives in the NFL, because the narratives are all over the place in the fucking NFL. Somebody needs to go through and just like cut through the bullshit. Because here's the thing, none of us are going to be experts on analysis of football. But we can actually just refine narratives that are actually going on about the plays that are and the players that are happening and the teams that are happening in the league, and contextualize things. I think we'd be very good at that. But no, I mean, nobody is going to be breaking down, plays and routes and everything like that. Nobody has those abilities. Now that he's personally led T1 in back-to-back Worlds titles, is Joe Marsh the GOAT CEO? This is maybe the worst part of T1.
Sadly, that has aged very badly. Where we used to laugh after 22, like, haha, at least he didn't get a World. So he's got 2 now, Monty. So that's a shame, isn't it? I know. It's a shame. It's a real shame.
Doesn't that hurt the most?
It does. It does.
I mean, the bar was set low, though. We had guys like Reginald, man. Like, what are we talking about here?
Oh, by the way, I'll just throw this out there as well. I actually think an example of where everyone in esports, is a classic line, is a fucking pleb, an absolute mark, an idiot who can't even put basic facts together. I don't know if you saw this, Monty, but Reckless during Worlds called out G2 and Fnatic as orgs for like mistreating him and being really like bad to him. So, right, here's what's mad about that, Monty. Those are by definition the best European esports orgs. Like if they suck, it's like I used to say about people like fucking I think I've told this story before, but when you hear people like Nemesis complain about those Fnatic lineups, or back in the day, Forgiven complained about H2K, I'm like, bro, you're already in the best orgs of the best players. Like, what more do you? What secret grass is greener do you imagine there is? Well, here's what's mental about that statement, Monty, and everyone agreeing with Reckless, like, if Reckless says it must be true. They mistreated him, right? What org is Reckless currently in, you fucking clowns? He is in a super ruthless Korean org that I guarantee 100 times over has done shit like Fnatic and G2 did with their players and brutally just caught people, benched people, giving you no warning. It's like, you're an evil empire, you fucking idiot. You're on the Death Star right now going, tell you what, some of that shit back in the day was a bit unacceptable. Like, what are you talking about, bro? Are we all pretend? T1 is the org that literally wouldn't let LS be a coach because he's gay. And you're all picking up, hey, yeah, Reckless is right. Fuck G2 Fleck. No, fuck you idiot, Mark. Like, he's in T1 right now. He has no problem there because guess what? He's not even talking to them. One, he's lying. He can't speak Korean. He's not even vaguely fluent. Bro, he doesn't even talk to them when they're in those rooms at the back because he can't speak to them. He can just say, like, hungry, like that. He's like a fucking baby in a tie chair. They even go out of their way really cynically to like interact with him, like, quick. Look, Reckless looks lonely. Like, hey, high five. hey, the gaijin. They don't really use that term. I'm using that. Hey, the gaijin is sad. Quick, give him a high five. They do that shit over there. Like, they treat him like an actual like token fucking person in the team, didn't they? Like, the whole thing's whack. There's no way. He's in an evil team. They're all, spoiler, all teams are like this. They're all ruthless. They're all ruthless, of course.
Also, to go back to the Joe Marsh question, the thing about Joe Marsh is that Joe Marsh walked into the most prestigious esports team in the world with 15 to 20 years of esports history that had already won multiple titles across a bazillion different games, and also had the most money because not only did he have SK Telecom's money, but he was literally the buddy of the billionaire son of Comcast who was using esports like toys to create a joint venture between SK Telecom and Comcast, and he was transferred from Comcast Spectacor, which is their sports division that owns the Philadelphia Flyers, in order to run this team. So it was cronyism that got him this job.
He's basically one of the whack characters in Succession or something. He's like one of the ones that isn't actually the power player.
Let's be very clear. Okay. This was not an open hiring process. Okay. This was cronyism where he was inserted into this position, despite the fact that he had zero video game or esports experience, zero experience dealing with Korean business at all. And then on top of that, he just gets to ride the legacy. Okay. So the real question is, could someone else have done this with the infinite money glitch and the infinite prestige glitch and already having Faker? Who could have done better would be my question to you. Is Joe Marsh the greatest esports CEO? No. Is he the most lucky? Yes. Are you guys ready for Chovy to get robbed of LCK Player of the Year again for the 3rd year in a row? Oh, Faker's winning it for sure, guys. Faker's winning it for sure. And Faker deserves the MVP of the finals, by the way. I think absolutely he deserves the MVP of the finals. But will Chovy get robbed? Yes.
Yeah, but here's also the robbery, Monty. Notice he didn't say League of Legends Player of the Year. Oh, he's also going to steal it, Monty, from like Monacy or someone in CS. Like, they're not going to win it because of this. Like, get ready. It's going to happen again. It happens every time. We're going to nick it again.
The narrative's too strong. I almost can never watch League live since it is very hard to... I almost never cannot watch League live. Sorry, you used a double negative. Since it is very hard to not get any spoiler and League's website/VODs are terrible, how is a good way to either avoid spoilers or how do you manage to still enjoy fully watching a match despite knowing this result? I don't have that problem. I only watch VODs, guys. I almost never watch the game live.
It's going to sound harsh, but you know that real problem you have with spoilers? Get over it. I know. What am I saying? Get over it.
Also, the LOL Esports VODs subreddit literally is spoiler free. So just use that. It has.
And by the way, before anyone hits me with Monty with like, yeah, but you could see at the top. Don't look. Click that. You know where it links to the start of the game, like pick ban. Click that and don't look at the time. Cover the timeline like that. Let the video start. Full screen it out and then don't look at the time. Just
you don't even have to do that anymore, Thorin, because they're cut into individual games, so you don't even know how long the total game is. And by the time you get to the end of game 3, you'll know if it's a 3-0 or not, and then you just keep clicking the next game. Yes. It's very, very easy. They're all cut into individual VODs. You do not have to worry about that whatsoever. The subreddit is called LOL Event VODs. Just use that. Also, just delete social media apps off your phone if you fucking care so much. Don't look at Twitter. With the LPL downsizing next year, what are the chances we could see a prominent Chinese player go to the LCK? 0. I mean, maybe if they want to be on fucking Nongshim. But I don't think any of the top Korean teams have any interest in having a player who can't speak Korean on their teams. Unless by top Chinese player, you mean rookie who's actually Korean coming back to LCK.
By the way, that's still one of those things I find mental when people do the like LCK versus LPL comparison. Remember, if you're not BLG, the others are all fucking Koreans and Chinese. Like Scouts just playing with Chinese people versus all Korean teams. Like, are we going to act like that's not a factor? Like, surely it is, of course.
I mean, I think that maybe some of the LPL players who are Korean come back. I mean, Scout's been trying, man. He's been fucking trying. he's just trapped in China. Are you guys ready for when Chovy or Knight finally wins Worlds one day? The narrative will be that they were bad and choking all the years before, but eventually became great only when they won. Well, the other annoying narrative. So here's the actual fear that I have, Thorin, is it's not that I hate T1 or I hate Faker. I just hate the lies about the narratives around them. My real fear, Thorin, is that the fans reverse and all the Chovy fans pretend like they never said that he was choking or try and pretend that he was always great, which he hasn't been, guys. I literally on this podcast talked about his evolution as a player, and they just pretend that he like arrived from Griffin, the player that we see today. That's actually the more annoying thing. And I say this as somebody who likes Chovy.
Oh. No, I'm with you.
With another 4th seed winning Worlds, what are some past potential 4th seeds that could have had strong chances to win? Some examples I can think of are 2013 KT Bullets. That's a great one. Absolutely. 2016 KT, because they were competitive with all the top 3 LCK teams. 2018 Kingzone. Since Worlds switched to strong solo lanes, they had Con and BDD. That's very good. I think you have a good list here. 2018 JDG, since they pushed IG to 5 games and had a strong top side of Zoom, Klid, and Yagao. Yeah, those are some good ones. I don't think there are that many 4th seeds that would honestly have had a chance. I like the 2018 Kingzone and the 2013 KT Bullets, though. I think those are good shout outs.
No, the actual sad one there, as he pointed out, is Kingzone basically peaked the wrong part of the year. Their team was tailor-made to be in that solo lane meta. That would have actually been amazing. Yeah, he's right. Yeah, he's right.
Is it fair to call Faker the lul's Tom Brady? Helps them win games, more cerebral than mechanical. Well, now he is. He didn't used to be that way. Unusually good in playoffs, so when the game is in his hands more often than not, clutches it out. The problem with that is that Tom Brady also just had great regular seasons. You know what I mean? Like the Patriots weren't some team that was like going into the playoffs at 9-7. They were always like first or second seed in the AFC and, hosting the AFC championship game. So they were favorites basically the entire time. What was the worst record that Brady ever had?
I'll look it up for you. I think it was something like
10-6.
Yeah, I think it was 10-6. It was a 10-6 season, which, by the way, still won them their division.
Well, AFC East, baby.
well, it was just the most trash can one of all time. Yeah.
Nobody likes talking about how the Patriots were just destroying these garbage AFC East teams for all time, though. Like they were literally like the other three teams in his division are just trash for literally his entire career.
Almost perfectly his entire prime. Yeah, exactly. It's mad, isn't it? And then it's like what's mad as well is the second he left that division, Monty, it was like nature started to heal, and like Tua went to the Dolphins, and they got like Josh Allen.
Josh Allen to the Bills.
Nature started to heal and be like, oh, now there can be real teams
but
in this.
Nothing can ever fix the Jets. Nothing can ever fix the Jets. What would your top 10 list of LPL players look like? Oh my God, I don't know if we're going to do that right now. Are there any interesting players you would pick that people don't often think about or don't talk about anymore, like MLXG? Going? Probably. Going was a very, very good player in his prime. I don't know if I'd put him in top 10, but he's definitely in consideration. We often lament that the team winning Worlds or MSI is patch zerging. If technical constraints weren't a factor, what would you say about the following adaptation for Best of 5 series? Side select is randomized for each game. Instead, the losing team gets to pick the patch for the next game.
That's anyone from the last idea. I know it's so mental in it. I know
anyone from the last several patches.
Oh, that's an absurd concept.
I do like the creativity though. That's funny.
That's asshole. How am I going to remember a patch from like 3 months ago or something? That's insane.
No, from the last several. Maybe you can pick from the last 5 patches.
That's still insane though. I was supposed to remember all the details of the specific patch. This is ridiculous. Like the information burden.
I like it. Look, I don't care if it's overly complicated. If it gives us better series, that's my
better series. It'll be worse series. Now, also, then think about what people are going to then blame Monty. Like, oh, they would have won game 4 if they hadn't picked patch 11.7. Shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? That's garbage. That doesn't even work. It doesn't work, bro.
I do wish desperately that they would stop changing the game so dramatically from summer playoffs into Worlds. Can we please just do that? Why do we have to live our lives like this, where the meta just entirely changes between between the time when teams qualify and when the time when teams actually play Worlds?
Even though I actually did genuinely think this Worlds was pretty good, and I even thought the final was mega, etc. The one complaint I have about the meta at the end of the tournament is this, Monty. It did fucking suck for junglers, though. Who wants to see 1 million Skarner games, bro? Boo. That's all I get is just Skarner into Sejuani.
I counter with Poppy games and Poppy rules.
Yeah, but it was fucking support half the time, wasn't it? So you don't need it in jungle. Don't need it. Skarner. Yeah. What an uninspired rework. Now the ult gets multiple people. Oh, who gives a fuck, mate? This is trash. This is trash, bro. Where's Lee Sin? Where the fuck is Lee Sin? Get him back out. Get Lee Sin back out.
At least we got some Kindred. We got a Kindred win in the finals. Could have been worse.
Also, how cursed is that as well? Pureshik's fucking legacy lives on. The Kindred in the finals. Get that fuck out of the server.
All right, that was the last question. So we did all the questions this week, guys. We'll be back next week. Roster rumors. We actually didn't touch on too much on the KT roster rumors or
we can do all those next week.
We'll get it. We're going to be here all off season, guys. So we'll hit some of the.
Coming up soon.
Yeah, 4 Horsemen coming up in a couple days to talk about the LCS changes, so you can look forward to that. As announcement comes out, as these roster rumors come out, we'll break them down. We'll be back next week for you guys, so we'll see you then.